Great. Welcome everyone to the Town of Greater Napanee Regular Session Council for the 25th day of March 2025. Just before we call the meeting to order, just want to remind everyone that this evening's meeting will be live streamed via our YouTube channel. And welcome to the folks at home that are watching. And for those that are going to watch it tomorrow or the next day, next week, welcome to those as well. And of course, welcome to those folks that are here in the council chambers this evening. So having said that, we'll call the meeting to order. We're going to start this evening's meeting out with our closed session meeting that we had this evening at 6 o'clock. We'll look for a motion to rise and receive from closed session. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Councillor Shank. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. I'd like to report from closed session this evening that in closed session, we approved the closed session minutes of March 11th, 2025, reviewed applications for the Waste Diversion Committee, and received information regarding potential litigation affecting the municipality. I'd also look for a motion this evening with respect to our Waste Diversion Committee, and the motion would be that council appoint Monica Pettit, Gwen Gigna, Jeff Chestnut, and Talbot Tucker to the Waste Diversion Advisory Committee for the 2025-2026 term. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Norrie. If there isn't any further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. And those folks that I mentioned, welcome. I'm sure that somebody will be reaching out to you in the not too distant future to advise you of your successful application to our Waste Diversion Committee. Having said all that, we'll look for a motion for the adoption of the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Shank. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none. This evening's council meeting is going to start off with a presentation. And for those at home that aren't aware, we had an incident this weekend on Saturday night in which a motor vehicle entered the Napanee River and became lodged at the top of the Napanee Falls. We don't see this every day, and we may never see it again. And as a result, our emergency services persons, many of them that are here this evening, put their own life at risk in order to save the person that was in the vehicle. And for that, we are grateful. And we thought it would be only fitting if we shown our extreme thanks for the folks that are the folks that were there that evening. And you know, I think each and every one of us realize that in emergency services, 9 days out of 10 are really easy days, and it's the 10th day that you show up, things happen that none of us expect. So thank you, folks. And I'm going to turn it over to Chief Armstrong. I know that Chief Armstrong is going to have a few words to say, and we're going to present each and every one of you a certificate of our appreciation. So thank you. And Chief Armstrong, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. It's a great honor to lead such an extremely competent group of individuals. And I'm here tonight, Your Worship, to just say a couple of words about the incident. You opened it very well, so I'm going to cut my presentation or words a little short. But just around the incident, a lone driver and vehicle plunged into the river on Saturday evening, about 6:47 p.m. And the lone occupant in the vehicle floated down the river and was wedged at the top of the waterfall in the Napanee River. The car was obviously carried by the swift current, and the situation was dire as the individual was precariously positioned above the dam. As firefighters arrived on scene, they immediately began the rescue operation. The cold, swift-moving water added to the challenges that they were faced on that evening. But their determination was unwavering for sure. During the rescue attempt, 2 responders found themselves trapped beneath the top of the falls and caught in the powerful currents of the hydraulic in the river. With remarkable teamwork and bravery, the firefighters rallied together to free their trapped fellow firefighters. Their coordinated efforts paid off, and they successfully rescued the 2 responders from the treacherous waters. But their mission wasn't complete. The occupant of the vehicle, distressed and suffering from cold water exposure, needed their help. Through sheer determination, the firefighters managed to reach the stranded driver and bring them to safety. Obviously, a full debrief will occur this week to find out what happened and explore all the details of this incident with an eye to improving our responses. However, their unwavering commitment and heroic actions of the team here tonight, they deserve our deepest gratitude. And I thank your worship for your words. Their bravery in the line of duty not only safeguarded their lives of others, but also strengthened the very fabric of the town of Great Napanee. And for that, I'm very grateful. Thank you, worship.
Thank you, Chief, and very well said. I think at this point, we'll call each of you up one by one, and we're going to present you with a certificate of our appreciation. So thank you.
Apologies in advance if I make any mistakes on these names. Sorry. So once you shake hands with the mayor, we'll ask you to come along the front here, and then our CAO is going to get a group photo of everyone. That way YouTube can also see all of you. So first up, we have Al Hatton.
Al took the cold water plunge. He was one of the first in the water.
Mike McGee.
Mike had the unfortunate pleasure of a trip down the river in the rapids.
Trevor Sager. Jody Wales. Brittany Bordage. Matthew Brannon. Connor Clark Aldred. Tina Duncan. James Feeney. Brad Fish. Oh, sorry. Rob Hanna. Ken Meinke. Brad Nickel. Mike Perry. Sean. Sorry. Sean Talkenitz. Okay. And Nathan Thompson.
Okay, I think we've emptied out our council chambers almost, but not quite. So thanks, folks, for bearing with us. It's always good to for an incident such as that to end in a good way as opposed to a bad way. I've seen many of them that haven't ended so well. So it's always good to end on a good note. So thank you again. Next up on our council agenda is our presentations. Deputations, scheduled deputations, new items. And I believe the first presenter will be Donald Stokes with respect to the Great Bay of Quinte barbecue competition. So Donald, I know you've been here before. I'll reiterate that as you get settled in there, that the button on the right is the talk button. You have to push and hold it when you're talking. If not, the folks at home aren't going to be able to hear what you're going to say, and I know that the folks at home are going to want to hear that. So whenever you're settled and ready, Donald, the floor will be yours. Welcome, Donald, and whenever you're ready.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you, council. Thank you to everyone. So we've been working long and hard on bringing the barbecue competition here to Napanee based on the model that was done in Western Canada. August 23rd is the elected date. In behind on the Market Square is the venue that we've requested. With that in mind, we had just a few requests when it came to, to council and it came to the event. Being 100% volunteer organization, so to speak, everything that we do is giving back to the community, or everything is intended with any surplus is, to give back to the community, to hopefully to things that are approved assets to be able to add to the town, be it a bike rack, it could be a sign for a trail, it could be any one of a number of things. Maybe it's seeds for for a soccer pitch, but just things that can, are a legitimate asset to, to the town. Anyways, as far as what I've done for a request for the town, we've came a long ways. We now have the counties on board for, fairly significant financial contribution. We have other things. We have 2 out of 3 categories fully sponsored. We have the third category. It's just a question of what form of, whether it's going to be a sponsorship or a donation. With the request from the town, we have a total of 7 items that we've put on there, all of which I believe are fairly realistic based on for the event being on August 23rd, 2025. Number 1 is simply block off the market square to secure as a community event. So that would be like the morning of doing that. Going into number 2, sweep the streets. Time this with routine maintenance. Do it, say, the afternoon of the, before the event. That's typically done in a lot of different communities. Number 3, the electrical outlets, because you do have some barbecues that require electricity, or some, just some different features, whether our sound system that we've rented locally, everything that we've done is local. Let's test the electrical outlets and ensure water availability. You have water available. There's a water outlet on the north side here that I understand that could just have to be turned on, but just having that tested and hook that thing up to be able to make that work so that we have access to water. Garbage. Having 3 garbage cans on each side. 3 garbage cans each side, which I feel is a modest amount, and having somewhere during the event, approximately midday, just someone come in and check that garbage one time. Check the garbage and go and, empty it or, bag it or whatever we need to do just in order to keep keep it nice, clean and tidy, which is typical when it comes to a lot of community events. And then following the event, because of the incidents, unfortunately, of vandalism and stuff, hopefully following the event fairly quickly being able to go and have that garbage removed. There's also the chance with that, because we're dealing with some organic matter, it's a great opportunity if a person wanted to look at the doing a pilot, like a little micro project, or I call it like a micro project of taking care of organic waste. Great opportunity. But that's just something that's there. That's up to the town with what they choose to do or not do. The number 5, ensure fire safety compliance with the fire department. There's protocols that are typically in place in other communities when it comes to, again, like live events where food is prepared. And typically when it comes to anything with a barbecue, often you end up having things like an ash barrels. And requesting, every team is requested to have fire suppression, but often, sometimes the fire department likes to drop in and see it, but that's perfectly fine. But we want to be able to make sure that we work with them in any protocols that are suggested, that we want to make sure that we fall in line. Everything when it comes to food, health and safety, we're making sure that, we have people that have other food handlers on every single team to make sure that everything falls in line, with this type of event. The final 2 items are just incidentals. One is number 6, that following the event, something that I'm used to doing, something I'm used to seeing is offering and presenting a post-event review, a full and proper event review that's done for council and staff. And an event review that goes through realistically based on numbers and processes that are common in larger centers to be able to to see that and do it and have those numbers, have that presented and have it done in a proper way. The final thing is an invitation. And this is number 7, that we'd like to be able to personally invite. Again, when it comes to this judging for the barbecue competition, we don't do stuff like having the local beauty contest winner or the captain of the volleyball team. We like people to know their stuff. And so we'd like to be able to suggest the notion that council put forward one person and one person only that knows their stuff when it comes to barbecue, food, that sort of thing. Because I suspect that there probably is someone that is there. Simultaneously, I'd like to also suggest having a member of senior staff or staff as a whole, but someone that knows their stuff. You know, it's a simple 3-question form that's filled out. In Western Canada, I had the federal fisheries critic. It's a gentleman that he'll probably end up in a senior post when it comes to the potential upcoming government in Canada. But this gentleman, he had to fill out the form, the same as everyone else, these 3 questions, whether he did it or one of his staff did it. But we'd like to invite you to consider the notion of having a person put their name in to be a judge, for one category. Because there will be a total of 3 categories that'll be in there. One that's called an ancillary. It'll be based on probably corn. The second will be based on, a key protein, probably like pork or beef, something like a meatloaf. And the third will be something like a chicken. The 2 posters that I've had sent around here, those are both just in their final stages, and they'll end up being distributed coming up probably within the next week, to where they'll end up, going live. But it's something that's just done in a little bit of a lighthearted vein. We have the Kinsman Club, they came on board and they verbally offered to be able to take care of the, the liability insurance, because liability insurance is a big deal. When it comes to some things like, unfortunately, my understanding is that there is no public washrooms here. So we are prepared to be able to go and rent the public washrooms. If there is any assistance in being able to get a better deal, so to speak, we welcome being able to being shown the path, so to speak, about how to get that. Because when it comes to like larger events that are designed to grow, or events that are designed to grow, 1 or 2 washrooms doesn't catch it. Porta potties are not really, people don't really like porta potties. I doubt very many people in this room like porta potties, but it's something that, well, got to do what you got to do. And we'll make sure that we have an adequate amount of at least 4 porta potties, 2 of which will be fully accessible. We'll also make sure that we, when it comes to it, that we have full hand washing stations with proper hand sanitizer to go and meet or exceed any grade when it comes to health and safety. I welcome this time to speak. I welcome any questions regarding the barbecue competition. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Donald. As always, it's good to see you. Is there any questions of council for Mr. Stokes with respect to his presentation that we've heard this evening? Councilor Hicks.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Thanks, Donald. Good presentation. I've been following along on Facebook. We do have on the agenda tonight the community events policy, which has been written, and I don't know if you had a chance to read that before the meeting. Okay, so I'm all in favor, and when you confirm the date, I put it right into my calendar, so I'll be here. I would be willing to get involved with the corn, but I'm not a barbecue gal. I don't know my stuff, but I'd be willing to judge on corn. Just putting it out there.
Great, thanks, Councilor Hicks. Is there any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councilor Shank.
I think it's an excellent idea. We have a farmer's market that now is going to be established, and then here's another community event that you're going to be doing. And so I think any way that the town can rally around this and make it a, you know, how many times do you have a barbecue event like something like that in this town? So if anybody contribute or help out or any way possible, I know it's on YouTube, so I'm kind of putting a shout out. I know where you're getting the corn, so we've got that covered. So all I'm saying is that I think it's a great event, and kudos for you for taking this on, and hopefully the town rallies around it, and how often you get to go and watch a barbecue competition. No, I know there's some pretty good eaters amongst council, so I won't start to say that here. All right, but there's names that could be probably put forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Shank. I was going to suggest, by the looks of council, very few of us have shied away from the front of a barbecue, so thank you. Is there anything else? Seeing none, thanks, Donald. Normally, with respect to deputations, Donald, we don't make decisions this evening. What we do is we'll put this information. I know staff has been taking these notes and they're going to come back with us with respect to a report. But more importantly, and I thank Councillor Hicks for bringing it up, is that we'll be discussing the community events policy, which some of your requests I think fall right within the community events policy, and it will give us a clear idea as to where we're going and how we're going to be able to do things. So, yeah, go ahead and I'll finish.
I have not seen the community events policy. I applaud the decision with bringing this forward. I hope that with whatever is written, that events that are not 99, 100% volunteer and actually give something back to the community as part of the stated mandate. Our stated mandate is promote, provide, inspire. It very, very, clear. And I hope that that is somehow is encouraged as part of the events policy. But I'm really happy that we've hit this point where this is beginning to go forward. Thank you.
Yeah, as am I, Donald. And like I say, I think it would be prudent, I think, at this point is to allow council to preview the report this evening with respect to the community events policy. We'll see how that fits in with respect to some of your requests that are here. And I don't disagree with you. I agree in the fact that, and I know we've talked a number of times that when I first heard this, I was pretty excited about it. So I'm happy to see that we've got a date picked. I'm happy to see that you've put some planning into it. But if you could just allow us to run through this process, I'm hoping that it's not really time sensitive just because we've got August 23rd as a prospective date for the event. So, but I would welcome you to stick around this evening and if you have the time, or if you go home, you can finish watching this evening's council meeting with respect to the policy that we have. And if we get it done tonight, we get it done tonight. But I assure you that if we don't get it done tonight, we should be able to get it done by in the next 2 weeks. So. And that way we'll be able to see where this fits in, and then council can bring back, or staff can bring back a report with respect to how your requests fit into our policy, our newly minted policy, and then we'll move forward from that. But thank you for taking the bull, and I know it's not the right way of saying it, but thank you for taking the bull by the horns on this. And I know that there are lots of folks in this community that I think would be very excited about being in the downtown area and tasting some very good barbecued products.
Respectfully, I thank you all. And yes, I did take the bull. I wanted to grab it by more than the horns. I definitely wanted to grab that bull. Thank you.
And I think you may have. So thank you again, Donald. Madam Clerk, I think we'll look for a motion that council note and receive the presentation of Donald Stokes with respect to the Great Bay of Quinte barbecue competition, that council defer a decision regarding the in-kind support until after a decision has been made regarding the community events policy.
Through your worship, I think that would make sense. If council wishes, council could also approve the temporary road closure request for that date, subject to the terms and conditions of the town's road closure policies. And I will just flag that those are also currently subject to change depending on the direction of our community events policies. But if council wants to approve the portion of the closure for that date, that would not be out of step with our procedural policy.
I think at this point, maybe Madam Clerk.
But if you want to just do the whole thing,
Yeah.
either you'll know
I-
the results by the end of tonight or by the
That's what I
April 8th
think. And I
meeting.
think it might make it a nicer, cleaner package that we do that all at once and then move forward from there. So look for a motion to note and receive and defer a decision regarding the in-kind support until after a decision has been made regarding the community events policy. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Martin. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the presentation or the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed, motion's carried. Thanks again, Donald, and we're looking forward to seeing the end product. Next up, we have a deputation with respect to Tiffany Lloyd Guitars and Cars event. Thanks, Tiffany. Again, I know you've been here before, and I know you are aware of our wonderful microphone system. So push the button on the right to talk, and whenever you're ready, we're ready. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Richardson and members of council. I want to preface this by saying that I understand that the events policy is on the table tonight, and I was asked by staff to bring this forward because it is not currently yet in place. So do with that what you will. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here on behalf of Greater Napanee Connect and the organizing team for Guitars and Cars, an event we're looking to bring back to downtown Napanee this year on September 20th. We are requesting a road closure on John Street from Mill Street to Market Street for this event. We've already submitted a request to the county for the closure of Dundas Street. However, as part of their approval, we are seeking town support for necessary signage and road closure equipment to ensure a safe and successful event. And we also need to finalize the commissionaires that will be manning Center Street as well before the Dundas Street closure is approved. So this event is still in the planning phase, pending road closure approvals and sponsorship. We do have 3 sponsors confirmed as of about an hour ago. This is an expensive event to run, and we want to ensure that we have that, as well as infrastructure in place before reaching out to car clubs and broader participants. So brief history, Guitars and Cars was first launched in 2018 to celebrate the completion of one of the big dig phases, and it featured classic cars and custom vehicles, live music, a charity barbecue, a charity float sale. And the event was so well received that the car clubs urged us and businesses urged us to expand it in 2019. That year we saw 262 vehicles from as far away as British Columbia. There were over 1,000 people walking on the street at any given time. It was very hard to keep track. The events raised funds for local organizations like the Legion and the Lennox and Addington Hospital Foundation. And the TREM analysis estimated that $250,000 there was a $250,000 economic impact with about $49,000 in food and beverage sales downtown in the core alone. There has been strong community interest to bring this back. And now with the original organizing team, including Napanee Valley Cruisers, we're united. We are excited to move this forward. But again, we need the town's assistance with the road closure portion of that. So we believe this event aligns with our shared goals of supporting tourism, civic pride, and promoting economic activity in our community. So thank you very much. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Tiffany. Is there any questions or comments for Ms. Lloyd with respect to her presentation or the information we've seen already with respect to this? No, seeing none. I think we all are going to, it excites me, Tiff, when I see members of our community that come and present things as we've heard this evening. that are going to make our community better. So thank you for that. It's refreshing, and I know it's going to be a success. As you heard earlier, we have a community events policy that we're going to be discussing this evening. We may get it cleaned up tonight, we may not, but I can assure you that in the very, very, very near future, and we won't allow anything to get dragged on so it affects anything you folks are doing. So let us work our way through the policy. We'll see where we get tonight. If not, I'm sure it'll come back at our next regular session of council. And thank you for doing what you've done and what you're doing for our community. So thank you. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did have one question. How many, and I'm sure that somebody told me this previously, but how many volunteers did it take to run the initial event?
The large scale event in 2019, the second year? That's an excellent question. And just one moment. So I'll just say that into the mic, probably about 2025.
So you'd be looking for that same number again? Because I'm sure most of the people that were here in 2019 are more than eager to come back again because it was so successful. Okay, good. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything else? Seeing none, we'll look for a motion to note and receive the, oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Martin. You're getting me right at the 11th hour there. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Tiffany, I just want to ask, just double check. You're asking for John Street to be closed from Mill up to Market Square?
Yes, that's right. So we used John Street that's where the stage goes, but it also is where we bring cars in. It just the flow of traffic works much better when we bring them through Mill Street, and we keep Mill Street open, but we bring them through Mill Street up John, and then a volunteer helps guide them to the right spot to park. So we do east first, and then we move over to west. So although that is the only intersection we close, and then as we move down Dundas Street, the blocks are still open, and that's why we have commissionaires on Center Street to just ensure that people are following traffic rules while they're crossing.
Thank you, Tiffany. That's all I need.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Martin. Is there anything else before we look for a motion? Seeing none, we'll look for a motion to note and receive the presentation of Tiffany and Lloyd with respect to the Guitars and Cars event, and further that council defer a decision regarding the in-kind support until after a decision has been made regarding the community events policy, which obviously we will talk about in the not too distant future. So thanks, Tiffany. And do we have a mover by Councillor Noy, second by Councillor Martin? If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? The motion is carried. Thanks, folks. Again, it's nice to see these things happening in the downtown area. So next up on our agenda is the deputations with respect to items on the agenda, and I don't believe we have any of those. Correspondence items on the agenda, we don't have any of those. And we move to unfinished business, executive services, arts and culture awards, which we pushed over from our last regular session of council. And I see Mr. Grant going to the head table. So Mr. Grant, whenever you're settled in, the floor will be yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, as discussed at our last regular council meeting, we have had a request come from the Arts Advisory Committee to host Arts and Culture Awards. When I take a look at this particular request and the mandate of advisory committees, this would be a corporate endorsed event run by volunteers, but I would see this in the vein as something that the municipality both supports and encourages, and would likely have some of our branding on it, as this is an advisory committee that is advising the activities of the town. So with this particular report, I would suggest that and recommend that council support the Arts Advisory Committee in their efforts to plan and deliver arts awards approximately every 2 years. That council waive the associated fees for town hall. And in this case, the this would be our event and we wouldn't necessarily pay fees for an event that is run on behalf of the town and in coordination with the town. And further, that council authorized the use of approximately 4 hours of staff time to assist with setup, takedown, and communications of the Arts Awards through town communications channels. And so for members of council, I would suggest this is well within the mandate of the Arts Advisory Committee to recommend to council. They recommend, as I mentioned, the activities of the town. And staff is quite supportive of the recommendation. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Is there any questions or comments for Mr. Grant with respect to, go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, your worship, I think it's a great idea. And my next question, my only question is, does this fall under the corporate events policy? Or is this something else? Because I wasn't, yeah.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, this would be one of those items that falls neatly in the middle. If I were to put it and, put the guidance of a policy on this particular event, I would use the corporate events policy, given that the advisory committee is there to advise council and that the Arts Awards would be done in council's name.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Is Councillor Norrie?
Just quickly, this has been discussed since the start of this term. They're very passionate about it. They started what they wanted, a large-scale ball and that, and they've realized that's impossible. So we're starting small, and they just want to recognize local artists as best they can, and they're coming up with some good ideas. So I really appreciate this report, and I know they'll be looking forward to working on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Norrie, for those thoughts. Is there anything else? Seeing none, we do have a staff recommendation that council receive for information the Executive Services Arts and Culture Awards report, and further that council support the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee in their efforts to plan and deliver arts awards approximately every 2 years, and further that council waive the associated fees for the town using town hall, or in the event it is unavailable, the conference room at the Best and Bash Center to host the arts awards, and further that council authorize the use of approximately 4 hours of staff time to assist with the setup, takedown, and communications of the Arts Awards through the town communications channels. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Next up is our administrative consent agenda. Moving forward with that, we've got a number of items, so just bear with us as we move through it. First on the agenda is the minutes of the regular session of council dated March 11th, 2025. Is there anything in those minutes that anyone would like to bring to anyone's attention, or are there any corrections that need to be done? Seeing none. Next up is the committee minutes, Arts Advisory Committee and the Market Square Advisory Committee. Is there anything in those minutes? Anyone has any questions? And is there any of our council representation that would like to bring any highlights to anything that's in those minutes? Seeing none. Correspondence for information. I know we've received some of these correspondences for information a little earlier in the week. Is there anything in there that anyone would like to have removed and spoken to, or is there anything there that anyone would like to have any comments about? Seeing none. Executive Services Amendment to Bylaw 2024-005 Burning Guidelines in the Encampment Protocol. Is there anything in that document anyone would like to highlight or bring to any attention to? Seeing none. Executive Services Jimmy's Italian Kitchen 2025 Outdoor Patio License. Is there anything within that document that anyone would like to have any questions answered or spoken to? Seeing none. Executive Services Fool's Kitchen 2025 Outdoor Patio License. Is there anything in that document that anyone has any questions about or would like to bring any attention to? Seeing none. Executive Services Bylaw Enforcement Standards Policy Update. Is there anything in that document that anyone has any questions about or would like to talk about? Seeing none. Executive Services, ensuring effective role separation in the Emergency Operations Center. Is there anything in that document that anyone would like to speak to or make note of? Seeing none, Growth and Infrastructure Product Care Association of Canada Municipality Hazardous Special Products Materials Services Agreement. Is there anything in that agreement that anyone has any questions about or would like to make note of? Councillor Hicks, I see a hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll direct the question to Michael or Andrew, I guess. Is there I didn't see a dollar figure anywhere associated with this. So what? Andrew's nodding his head. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Through your worship, and thank you to the town clerk for this, noted that that's confidential information within the agreement. On a high level, I will speak to that the values of those commodities that we receive back have increased slightly.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Thanks, Andrew. Moving on is the activity report, financial and IT services for March of 2025. Is there anything in that report that any members of council have any questions or comments about, and do any staff members have anything in there that they'd like to highlight? Seeing none, the activity report, growth and infrastructure services, March 25th, 2025. Is there anything in that council has any questions? Councillor Purnell.
I think, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Nobes, if I could, please. In the report, thank you very much. You start off with, or sorry, a second on the report is we're talking about 417 to 427 Bridge Street, the public meeting that we had, and then also phase 12 of Westbridge Estates, Stokes subdivision. There's still some questions to be answered and still some concerns from residents with some specifics with entrance ways and the amount of driveways and stuff like this. And I'm just wondering, as that was the public meeting, and where do we go from here? How are we going to go forward? Is there still availability for residents to make their statements and their concerns?
Through your worship to Councillor Purnell. Certainly so, staff are always open to receiving comments up until the time at which an application is brought back to council. I would encourage any residents to send any comments to developmentservices@greaternapanee.com, just as it sounds is the email address. So that is goes to a number of staff. So we'll be sure that we get eyes on it and that we can provide pertinent responses to the resident ahead of any recommendation meeting. But any comments that come into that email address will be included on any future council agendas where staff are making any recommendations regarding applications. So I would encourage any residents to send to that email address, which is developmentservices@greaternapanee.com. Regarding the 415 Bridge Street application, we've, as identified in the activity report, we've had a few conversations with the county transportation staff about potentially reorienting roads and making new connections to Cherrywood to alleviate new connections to Bridge Street. There's significant resistance around that. The outcome of the municipal class EA and the resultant higher order road that the Cherrywood extension would be requires a fairly significant separation distance between the Cherrywood Parkway and Bridge Street intersection and any new intersections north of that. The closest intersection would be the most northerly new intersections that were shown on the draft plan. They would not support any new ones to the south of that. We proposed a number of mitigation measures, but they're unfortunately not willing to accept any new connections and intersections south of what has been shown. So we've really done as much as we can to try to mitigate those concerns that were brought up, but unfortunately, given what the class of that road will be, they're not supportive of any new connections to essentially reroute traffic from that subdivision, the subdivision's south end to put that traffic onto Cherrywood from that southerly area. So unfortunately, we weren't able to see any changes there with the county. But I would certainly support any residents making any additional comments, send to that email address, and we'll make sure that those comments are captured and included on council agenda when we bring this back for a recommendation. We're targeting an April 8th, so the next meeting of council, bringing it back for a recommendation. From a technical perspective, we've reviewed everything and the comments that were brought up during that public meeting. We have responses to those, and we'll build that into our recommendation report. But any comments that do come in, we'll strive to get responses directly to those residents ahead of that meeting, so they at least can see that and ask any further back and forth questions.
Yep, go ahead, Councilor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Thank you, Michael, for that. Is there anything on our website that we can attach that, the website address to that people can go to? Like it will be on Bang the Table or something along those lines so that they can go in and read about this and be able to click on the link and go?
Through your worship, to Councillor Pennell, I'll work with our communication staff on putting something out on the website or our social media channels to advertise that method of communication, and we'll link the public meeting, council meeting agenda to that, where residents can access all the technical materials and have a peruse of those too.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Pennell. Thank you, Mr. Nobes. Is there any other questions or comments with respect to Michael's report? Seeing none, activity report, parks, recreation, and culture. Is there anything in that report that anyone has any questions of or would like some clarification of? For Mr. Brown, I'll give you an opportunity to give any highlights if there's any that you want to highlight. So is there any questions for Chris? Seeing none, and you're good, Chris? Activity report, executive services, March 2025. Is there anything in that report that anyone has any questions or comments about? And I'll give Mr. Grant an opportunity to speak to that if he wishes. Nothing from council. Go ahead, Mr. Grant.
Great. Thank you, through your worship, to members of council. I'm pleased to say that we've had a successful recruitment of a new bylaw officer who will be starting in the coming days, which will effectively double our capacity in bylaw services. Our student hires are ongoing, and all the roles are approximately 80% filled. Staff did participate in a civil military cooperation exercise with the Canadian Armed Forces, who were doing a mock emergency exercise, and were kind enough to come to our offices, and we worked on that with them to prepare for emergency readiness. I can confirm that our senior bylaw officer has been working with our institutional partners and community partners to provide education and an overview of our parks bylaw and our encampment protocol, and plans for the spring and summer and fall seasons about how enforcement and education is going to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Is there any questions with respect to Mr. Grant's presentation? Seeing none, activity report, fire department, February and March 2025. Is there anything in that report that anyone has any questions they'd like to ask the chief with respect to the fire department, or any concerns? Seeing none, and Chief, is there anything in there you'd like to highlight? I know we've probably the stuff that we would isn't there yet, so.
Thank you, Worship. Just a note for councils in the report is there's been a significant reduction in our attendance to emergency medical responses as a result of the MPDS dispatch system that the paramedics recently put in place, and our new agreement for tiered first medical response. So I'm encouraged by that, and I think if that data trends in a similar way throughout the year, we'll see some significant improvements in the overall effort and cost of providing that service.
Thanks, Chief, and that's good news. Is there any, Councillor Hicks?
Thank you, Worship. Chief, I know when the chief paramedic was here and you were talking about the dispatch system and how the questions being asked, has there been, has that been going well with the general public in them calling in for a medical emergency, and how that triage process, I guess, is going?
Through your worship, I don't have any information on that, but I certainly will confer with the paramedic chief and provide council with an update on that.
Just curious to know how the public's responding to it and what the feedback's been.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Thank you, Chief. Is there anything further up the chief? Any questions, comments? Seeing none, and Access E11 report, February 2025. Is there anything in that document anyone would like to highlight, make note of, or have any questions of? Seeing none. So, oh, sorry, Madam Clerk. Oh, yes, and thank you, Madam Clerk. I omitted to speak to Executive Services Taxi Bylaw Update, which is 8.6 on our agenda. Is there anything in that report that anyone has any questions or comments about, or would like some clarification on? Seeing none, just bear with us. We do have a lengthy resolution or motion. We'll look for a motion that council consent to the approval of the following routine items: that the minutes of the regular session of council dated March 11, 2025 be adopted as presented, that the draft Arts Advisory Committee and Market Square Advisory Committee minutes of March 3rd through to 6th, 2025 be received for information, that the correspondence for information items dated March 25th, 2025 be received, that council receive for information the amendment to bylaw 2024-0065 burning guidelines in encampment protocol, that council receive for information the Executive Services Taxi Bylaw Update Report, that council receive for information the Executive Services Jimmy's Italian Kitchen 2025 Outdoor Patio License Report, and further that the council approve an outdoor patio license for the Jimmy's Italian Kitchen from May 1st through to September 30th, 2025 at 35 Jim Kimmett Boulevard, Napanee, subject to the conditions that are contained within the report, that council receive for information the Executive Services Fool's Kitchen 2025 Outdoor Patio License Report, and further that council approve an outdoor patio license for Fool's Kitchen from May 1st through to September 30th, 2025 for the patio on the sidewalk in front of 19A Market Square with the exemptions to sections 4A, B, C, and D of the town's outdoor patio bylaw number 04-38, subject to a number of conditions that are contained within the report, that council receive for information the Executive Services Bylaw Enforcement Standards Policy Update Report, and further that council amend the Executive Services Bylaw Enforcement Standards Policy as presented, that council receive for information the ensuring effective role separation in the Emergency Operations Center report, and further that council approve the Compliance Coordinator CEMC to move forward with the training required to appoint the Senior Bylaw Officer as alternative CEMC, that council receive for information the Growth and Infrastructure Report, Product Care Association of Canada, Municipality Hazardous and Special Products Material Services Agreement, and further that council endorses the Product Care Association of Canada, Municipality Hazardous and Special Products Material Services Agreement, and authorizes the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the town, and that activity reports for Parks, Recreation and Culture, Growth and Infrastructure, Executive Services, Fire Department, and Financial IT Services for the month of 2025, for the month of March of 2025, and the Access E11 report for February 2025, items 8.12 through 8.17 be received for information. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion that's on the floor, opposed, motion's carried. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Next up, Arts Advisory Committee recommendation, Music by the River. And I see Mr. Grant going to the front table. So Mr. Grant, when you get settled in there, the floor will be yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council. In line with the recently adopted advisory committee's bylaw, the Arts Advisory Committee has come forward looking for endorsement for an addition to their mandate, which would be running of Music by the River for 2025. This was going to come at the last meeting, but due to a procedural error, it didn't quite make it, so we're remedying that as we speak. So as part of this effort, they are looking to expend a portion of their budget, as yet undisclosed, towards that effort. They do have $5,000 that has been budgeted through the town's municipal budget process. Should there be a desire for any further support from the town, that would come in the form of a recommendation from the committee to council for approval, such as staff time or other resources. With that, I am happy to answer any questions or to have the committee member from the Arts Advisory Committee to provide more insights as to the discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Go ahead, Councillor Norrie.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. CAO. Just so everybody knows, we've scaled it right back, or the thinking of it, to just twice, once in July, once in August, 2 entertainers each time. I've spoken to the sound person. He's charging the same as last year. He's been very fair. So we're just waiting to hear, and we're looking for local talent once we define local. Never mind. You know, like in the area. So we're scaled it back to just what we think is good, and we're working closely with Michelle Hauser for other venues, which wouldn't affect our budget, but at least to help them. So there will be music down there more than just twice, but that's what the group has come to with a limited budget for advertising as well. But Mr. CEO said he has plans for that. So that's our plans anyways, if it's approved. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Norrie. Is there any questions or Councillor Hicks?
Thank you, through you, your worship. So I read through the report and I read that you're looking to advertise in the Napanee Beaver. And based on the communication survey that we did, our social media, but also this is something that should be posted on the Bay of Quinte in their newsletter. Like, we could probably get this into their newsletter that's emailed out to, I don't know how many tens of thousands of people, because people can come by boat and sit and listen to the music. So I just wanted to put that out there, that there is that newsletter that we're partially paying for, so we should be using it for our town events.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Go ahead, Mr. Grant.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hicks. So as part of the support to the advisory committee with a council endorsed event, there would be communication support for that. It is the intention of corporate communications, when they bring forward their strategic communications plan, to outline exactly how the town would support these kinds of events and committees which are serving as advisory committees to council. That would certainly include Bay of Quinte, that would include our own channels, and we could facilitate some purchasing of advertising at the request of the committee using the connections and the processes we have in place.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Hicks, then I'll go to, I think Councillor Pinell had a question as well, so.
Thank you. Through you, your worship. So when you're advertising for talent, will you also be looking for sponsors? Because I know you're paying for the talent, right? So this is where the budget is going, and partially why it's been scaled back. So if you were to have sponsors, would that maybe increase the number of times to more than 2? Or could you go longer on those 2 days? I'm just asking the question. These all came to me late this afternoon, or I would have asked prior to the meeting. Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
We haven't looked at that, because that's how Harmony works. They get sponsors. We just have a small budget. We did a study of how many people came last year, and appreciate those that come, and then the amount of people it takes to set up, and you need some of us there. So we just decided we're going to try it twice this year, and then piggyback with what happens with Harmony. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Norrie. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Pinell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was answered. It was about sponsorships. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Did I see your hand up, Mike, or no? Yeah. Okay, great. Is there any other questions or comments? And I know that staff is looking for some direction with respect to whether or not we want to venture into the music in the river. And it sounds like we probably do, but is there any other thoughts or questions or comments? Okay, and I'm from what I'm hearing, I think there is a appetite to include this in the mandate of the Arts Advisory Committee. Am I correct there? If so, I will entertain a motion that council receive for information the Arts Advisory Committee recommendation Music by the River report, and further that council approve the inclusion of the Music by the River within the committee mandate for 2025 and use a portion of the approved committee budget towards that purpose. Moved by Councillor Noy, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there any other questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
I fully support what Bob and the Arts Committee, our advisory committee is doing. How many events were done in the past and now we've scaled it back, or you guys have scaled it back down to 2? So when you create that data, how many people are going to be showing up in, I think, was it July and August, or those 2 events, just so the future in 2026, if it warrants it and there's, you know, a lot of people attending this, all right, and if you can get sponsors that you can increase those dates, because I know, because I live so close, I'm right on the water along Highway 33 in Loyalist, they have, and at Bath every weekend they have, and it's very well attended there. So if it's very well attended here and it's a takeoff here, that we can increase those dates. You know what I mean? Because I've had some phone calls where the same jumps, you know, well, why is there only 2? Why can't there be 5? Well, the committee is the one. I'm not part of that committee. I'll let the committee go through its process and go from there. But long as you collect that data so we can make an informed decision for 2026. That's all.
Thanks, Councillor Shank, and I'm sure that we'll see the results of that this summer. So go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just think that anytime that we can promote anything around our river, that natural beauty we have in this town, we have to utilize that much more than what we are, and I think we're on the right way. Councillor Hicks just, you know, hit it right now on the head. Come on in by boat, tie up and listen to it, and it's just great. So anytime that I can help promote that, I'm all for it. So you have my support. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there anything else before we call for the vote? Seeing none, all in favor of the motions on the floor, opposed, motion's carried. Thanks, folks. Next up, Executive Services, transfer of the former BIA social media channels to NGO. And Mr. Grant, are you going to speak to that as well?
I am, and through you, your worship, to members of council, you will recall that the newly forming NGO Napanee Connect previously made a request to hand over the keys, as it were, to the former social media channels that used to be run by the BIA, which were then adopted by the town. The town doesn't currently make a great deal of use of the Facebook and Instagram page, but they do have a number of followers and would represent a very decent start for Napanee Connect, and, you know, formally used for that purpose. If approved by the council, because they are our property at the moment, we would hand over the keys, as it were, to Napanee Connect. And we would also ensure that we post on those channels indicating a change of ownership. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Grant. Is there any questions or comments for Matthew with respect to his report or his presentation? Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Matthew, thanks for this report. I can see a lot of good things to do this, but can you help me out with what's the bad side of releasing this to that NGO?
Through you, your worship, to members of council, to Councillor Pennell, I honestly don't see a number of bad sides to this. The individuals have gone through a process and are going through a process of becoming an incorporated NGO, which would be an entity that we would certainly want to deal with. The mandate, I would suggest, suits you know, the purpose of the channels themselves, and, you know, being able to give them access to these channels with current followers, and of course letting the followers know a change in ownership, I would suggest would equal a decent amount of support and a head start for this organization, and I don't see a downside.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to move staff recommendation. I think this is great, and I think giving them 4,000 followers to kick things off is it's a good move on our part. So Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. We do have a motion that council receive for information Executive Services transfer former BIA social media channels to NGO report, and further that council directs staff to move ownership of the former BIA social media channels to the NGO Napanee Connect for their use in promoting their work. We moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Pennell. Is there anything further, any further comment, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion that's on the floor, opposed, motion's carried. Next up, Executive Services Municipal Volunteer Policy Amendments. And Mr. Grant, you're going to speak to that as well.
It is, I am. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council. So we have taken a look at our former volunteer policy and essentially revised that policy to make it more robust. Some of the highlights of this particular policy would include ensuring that an appropriate amount of information is collected from volunteers, that associated training is made available to volunteers, that information is held in custody by the Human Resources Division within my department, which again, I think is appropriate. We're putting language in there that should an event of any kind involve a vulnerable sector, that appropriate vulnerable sector checks are conducted, and that there's greater guidance around insurance liability and the management of volunteers more generally. From my perspective, I think this represents a more comprehensive policy, will allow us to create greater certainty into how we onboard, offboard, and manage volunteers more generally. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the policy and its contents.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Is there any questions or comments with respect to Mr. Grant's presentation or the report that's in front of us this evening? Councillor Hicks.
I don't have any questions. I'd just like to say that I appreciate the work that went into this, and I think it was probably long overdue. And good job. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything further before we entertain a motion? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation that council receive for information the Executive Services Municipal Volunteer Policy Amendments Report, and further that council adopt the municipal volunteer policy as presented. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Martin. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Growth and infrastructure replacement of utilities cargo van vehicle number 14-29. And Mr. Gerard, I think you're going to speak to that. So when you get settled in, the floor will be yours.
Through your worship to members of council, the report before you for a new utilities cargo van. The van's used for locates, on calls, and primarily for our meter changeout and meter program. Staff received 4 submissions. Staff's recommendation is to go with the Ford Transit 250 van. Of the 4 submissions, that one made the most sense to staff. 1 submission was thrown out because of the high pricing. 2 others were the size of the van, delivery date, or the size of the motor. One of the proposed vans that was of a lower value had a V8 motor in it, so the life cycle costing of that vehicle would be much higher than utilities would anticipate. And I'm available for any questions.
Thanks, Andrew. Is there any questions or comments, Councillor Norrie?
Yeah, I'm just curious of the one that's $14,000 less. Is that the one you say is a V8, costs too much to run, but we're saving $14,000? Is that correct?
Yeah, through your worship, that is the GMC van. It's got a V8 6.6 liter motor in it, which is a little oversized for the work that we look at that vehicle doing, as well as it doesn't have the cargo height size that staff are expecting in that vehicle to perform its role.
Okay, like 14,000 is a lot, but okay. for the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Nori. Deputy Mayor Carver.
What size engine is in the Ford Transit 250?
Through your worship, I can't get my computer to work properly, but I believe it's a V6 2.5 or 3.5 liter, but I'll follow up with council on that.
I just know there's no replacement for displacement, and smaller motors tend to work harder to do the same work. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Carver. Councillor Shank, then I'll go to Councillor Hicks.
Now, I mentioned this before, Andrew, so don't take this personally. So there's a lot of money going out, but it's a work van. You know what I mean? It's a good work truck. People are going to be throwing stuff in, throw it out, this and that. So me personally, my thoughts are is to spend $72,000 plus HST, get the HST back. All right. So I went on today and I was looking, well, you have a medium roof, you know what I mean? Like what else is out there? So instead of buying a new one, what I propose is that you get a good used one. I just looked just very quickly without even doing a real study on it. I can get one with 27,000 kilometers because anytime you buy a new vehicle, you know who takes the hit. All right. So why not go, instead of saying, we have it budgeted 80, but I can get you one right now with 27,000 kilometers, still has lots of warranty and everything else on it for 37. So I'm putting 43 into the coffers that we're saving for a work vehicle. You know what I mean? I'm not saying somebody that takes longer things, but instead of always buying new, but we're a work vehicle that I can get cheaper, you get a lot cheaper. I would advise, I'm not going to be in favor of purchasing anything new for a work vehicle. I 100% in favor of, this is a 2021, that's with a medium roof. And if you want to go for the high roof with 58,000 kilometers, I can get you one for probably 49. All right. So when you buy, and you're saving some $30,000, whoever buys it new, you can buy a brand new vehicle. And I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here, but whoever buys a new vehicle, as soon as he signs the dotted line, drives it off the parking lot, and then comes back, you've already depreciated so much. I know you want to keep the longevity of it, but it's a work vehicle. And if you can still get a vehicle that has a good motor in behind it, you know what I mean? And at the same time still carries a lot of warranty, you know, why not? Why not go ahead and save your $30,000 or $40,000? Because it's very hard for me to go ahead and say to the taxpayer, we're doing everything in our power, and then they see a brand new work truck. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So that's the reason why I personally am not in favor of spending that type of money for this. I mentioned it beforehand to research why I always buy new. If you're going for work vehicles, maybe let some previous owner take the hit. If we can get some low mileage and a good savings, then why not look at that avenue? So that's where I'm going by. And that was just me just quickly researching with a high roof, medium roof, and a low roof. And I'm saving between $30,000 and $40,000 of taxpayers' money. So that's why I'm going that route.
Thank you, Councillor Shank. Mr. Grant, do you want to respond, or and then we can let Andrew respond as well?
I did actually. So just in a general sense, so council is going to see most capital items come forward given the tariff environment, and I wanted to make sure that we had an eye on whether or not things were coming in and over budget. This one was approved in the capital budget. With respect to buying used vehicles, what I would suggest is when we bring forward a revised procurement policy, I would suggest that guidance and direction within that policy, if we're looking for value for dollar, and to go a used route, might be the appropriate place to do that. I would say that staff doesn't necessarily have that guidance now. Going out and sort of independently shopping for a vehicle is not something that they're able to do by policy, and certainly not something that I would endorse them doing. The process as it stands now, and that was followed, is an RFP process. You put in the specs, and then you sort of get what you get, and to that's sort of, we can maximize accountability. That being said, if there is a change in direction and policy where council would like to prioritize in RFPs that we first go out for used vehicles or used equipment, we can certainly do that. But I can confirm that that wasn't the direction provided in this particular procurement, and it's not the guidance in the policy as it stands.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Go ahead. I'm going to let Councillor Sank finish, and then we'll move down the right. I think Councillor Hicks and Councillor Pennell have questions.
So I'm well aware of that. That's, you know what I mean? Everybody has to follow procedures. But through the budget process, I had mentioned this. Now, maybe it was the naivety of my part of going ahead and saying, okay, we're going to have a procurement officer that was going to look after all this. We don't have a procurement officer yet, so we can't look after this. So therefore, it throws a different angle to this. And then we're going to have a fleet rationalization plan. All right. Why we didn't purchase something else, because we had also said to the roads department, I'm sorry, we can't get a dump truck because what is our needs? So what I'm looking at is, instead of, I know it's against the current policy that we currently have, which I understand, is that you and I and all of council know, and especially Ellen, our treasurer, who looks after the purse strings, knows what might be coming down and what the extra cost for a snowplow might be because of tariffs and everything else. So if it's going to cost us an absolute need that we're going to have because of what had transpired during the wintertime, we have to go ahead and save costs somewhere else. So I know it's against the procedure, but what I'm looking at is if I can save 30 where in the same budget, where I know the roads budget might be 30 over because of tariffs, I'm not going to the taxpayer or going to Ellen saying we have to go into our reserves or something else. I'm just looking at this one item, but if you need to change the policy in the meantime to do it, that's all I'm looking at, is where we can save, because there might be other costs coming down that we're not sure of.
Thanks, Councillor Shank. Go ahead, Andrew.
If I may, through your worship, just for clarification, for any public that's listening, and I'm sure Councillor Shank's aware of this, is a utility purchase, so it would be separate from the purse of money which we draw from for plow trucks. But I understand the rationale behind what you're saying, and I guess I would say that I'm at the whim of council and senior leadership as to what direction you'd like me to take with this purchase.
Go ahead, Mr. Grant. Then I think Councillor Shank wants to continue before we go in a different direction. So go ahead, Mr. Grant.
And so just through you, your worship, and so if it is the will of council that they would like us to go out with a different RFP prioritizing used vehicles at this point in time, that is your privilege. And so in terms, and what I would also suggest is that when we bring back the procurement policy on a more holistic view of how we acquire vehicles, equipment, and the like, we can build that in to the overall policy. But on this specific item, if it was council's will that they would like to forego a new vehicle and explore used vehicles, it would cause a delay, but it is your privilege to direct that we go out with different specifications.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
I don't want to debate it, guys. All I'm saying is, Matthew, everybody's got legitimate points here. All right, and very well respected. Whether you're PUC, whether you're roads, it's a municipality, we're spending $70 million on a sewage plant. You know, there's might be some cost overruns because of tariffs. There might be other things that are coming up. We have an archaeological study. We have this. There's other things that are coming up. So if I can save $30,000 in buying a new one, and I could buy one phone call because it's right on card, I can right in Toronto where it is. I could have it here tomorrow by probably 9 o'clock. So, but all I'm saying is if you need to change the policy on this, that's just all I'm saying. As I just can't consciously, I know the policy is against the policy right now, but if we can change the policy, save 30 grand, that's all I'm going to say. But it's all of council makes that decision. I'm only one member.
Mr. Grant.
Through you, your worship. So in lieu of sort of guidance from a policy level, I would just say that, again, if on this particular case, there was a motion and a resolution of council that, you know what, given the current climate with tariffs and uncertainty, we would like you to go out and explore a used vehicle with different specifications. Staff is able to take that direction from council and would certainly act on that direction from council.
Yeah, I'm going to allow, I got a couple other people that are going to weigh in, Councillor Shank, and I know that Councillor Hicks, Councillor Pennell, and Deputy Mayor Calver. So we'll see if we can get around here and then we'll entertain a motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. Andrew, I read the report and I understand, I think, what you're going for and that the 18 inches shorter than ideal. Does it still allow someone to either sit at a bench? I'm making an assumption here that you want this van outfitted with a workbench, a proper light. You're going to carry tools in it so that instead of driving back and forth to the shop, you're able to do on-the-spot repairs, or at least temporary repairs until that's the premise. It's fully outfitted and ready to go. Yes?
Through your worship, that's correct. Yeah, we'd like to store extra parts so that we don't have to run back to the shop and inconvenience customers or residents, as well as a workspace, though that workspace might reside within the cockpit or the front of the car where the operator is able to work on a surface on his laptop, and view appointments and changes and look things up in the system. That's the intent.
And if I can follow up, the
Go ahead,
intent
Councillor.
is that it's two people, driver and passenger?
Through your worship, no, that is a one operator's job, is our meter operator, and locates is a one person. There might be times where there be two, but the intent would be for one operator to use that vehicle.
So there's no passenger seat, basically. You're removing the passenger seat to allow for additional workspace.
Through your worship, I couldn't answer that at the time. I believe the van comes with a passenger seat if required. Yeah. And we wouldn't have the intent to remove that off the bat unless the extra room was needed in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. We already discussed that it's a user pay, it's coming from utilities, so this is funded through people who are on municipal services and are paying into this. But could someone remind me, please, because it's been a while since the budget, are any of the funds coming from DC charges to help pay for this as well?
Through your worship, no, not for this particular purchase, as it's a replacement of an existing vehicle and not related to growth-related needs.
Okay, thanks. And the vehicle that this is replacing, where is it going to be going?
Through your worship, the intent of that vehicle is to use by our hydrant students this summer, and then we sell or displace that vehicle in September.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Deputy Mayor Calver.
Yeah, through your worship, I don't disagree with you, Mike. I just have a problem with buying a used work vehicle. I don't know what kind of warranties. I mean, that's something we'd have to discuss and look into policy change, because like I say, this particular vehicle was approved at budget time. It's coming through utilities, which is a user pay system. It's not on every taxpayer for sure. Comes to a work vehicle, I really frown on used vehicles. I know we're trying to save the taxpayers as much money as we can, but you buy a used vehicle that's out of warranty in 2 years, and all of a sudden the transmission goes out. That money you saved, $15,000 for a transmission, doesn't go too far these days.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there any other comments or questions before we entertain a motion? And I believe Councillor Shank may want to make a motion. So is there anything else? Just briefly, with respect to the RFP process, and I know it's not part of this conversation this evening, and it may be part of a conversation at future meetings, but how would it work with respect to used vehicles? Would we entertain quotes with respect to both new and used vehicles. How would that work? Or am I preemptively asking a question probably none of us have an answer to? Mr. Grant or Andrew?
To your worship, I would work with finance and the executive office to come up with the parameters that we'd put out. We'd have to have some fairly stiff parameters in regards to amount of kilometers, maintenance, records, so on and so forth, so that we can compare apples to apples when we are comparing used vehicles. Obviously, comparing new to new is a lot easier, but if there was, as long as the RFP or RFT was set up so that we were getting some finite information, it would make the vehicles more comparable. And I don't know if Matthew or Ellen would like to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. So just reiterating what Andrew has already said, yes, that would be the approach. You would have to spec it out accordingly, providing in the RFP the years, the mileage, that type of thing, so that you know what you're looking at. We would then look at the scoring of that, if we're looking at used versus new, and the weights of each of those scoring. So I do think that there would be a way to combine those into one RFP. I'd like a little bit of time just to confirm that for sure. But I do think there's a way that we can do that as long as we build it in the specs of the RFP accordingly.
Yeah, and I apologize for venturing down a road that we're probably not going to go down, at least this evening anyway. So, but I thank you for that. So is there anything else before we entertain, Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a difficult time with this, trying to figure out what's the cheapest way to do it. I understand what Councillor Shank is saying, but I can only relate to my own experience. My wife needed a car back in 2005. We bought a 2005 Honda brand new. We still own it today. I'm driving it tonight. I've bought used vehicles in my lifetime in the past. Sometimes they last a year, 2 years, 5 years, but it's always hit and miss. There's no warranty other than maybe a 1 or 2 or 3 year maybe left, depending on. So if we're going to buy it used, we almost have to have some kind of parameter as far as warranty left on it, that type of thing. I don't know how you compare value to value though, because a new vehicle is going to last maybe 10, 15 years. We don't know how long a used vehicle is going to last. So I think we have to look at new and used, how much that's actually costing the taxpayer. It's not actually in levy on the general taxpayer, it's on water and sewer, so the user pay group. And I understand exactly, you're right, but you're also wrong. Myself personally, I prefer to buy new. Same thing, on both my vehicles, I bought new. One's a 2005, one's a 2010. Both of them I bought new, still driving them today. So I just want to throw that out there.
No, thanks, Councillor Martin. Deputy Mayor Calver.
Yeah, through your worship, and Andrew, maybe you can't answer this question, but just what is the year of the vehicle we're going to replace again?
Through your worship, sorry, my computer isn't working, but I believe it's a 2014.
And do you roughly know how many kilometers are on that?
Yes, through your worship, I believe when we brought the report to council as part of the capital expenditures, it was around 88,000 kilometers on that van.
88,000, it's you think it's a 2014. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Calvert. Is there anything else? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
So if you divide a new vehicle, divided by the years, 11 years, all right, to 2025 by 88,000, what does it cost you per year? So when you go ahead and you do the math, but then you go ahead and I was looking just here briefly, we're buying a 2024 brand new, 72,000. 2023 is 36. It's got 27,000 kilometers on it. So the warranty is, I believe it's 80 and 100. You know what I mean? So you have any years 1 year older, but I'm saving half. So, but it's, you know what? It's democracy. Make the decision, and there you go. And I would just, I don't know if anybody else would like to speak, but I would make the motion just so I can put it on record. It's democracy. That just for this one time only, until we have a procurement officer that can look after all this, you know what I mean? Until we have that hired for this just one item, that they look into, see what the I'm not going to go ahead and you have to buy this, but you look at the options if you can find something cheaper in the used market. Because briefly here, looking through, I could find something else, but I'd like to make that as a motion, whether I get a seconder or not, or whether it fails or not. That's democracy, guys. And I have no harms, no fouls. And there we go. So Jessica, if you could put that in that type of a frame, that I'm not.
We
getting-
still will be able to have a conversation once we put it on the floor, if it makes it to the floor. So, Madam Clerk.
So through your worship, assuming I get a thumbs up from the treasurer over here, tentatively, I think we could frame this as council received for information in the report. Further, that given the uncertain impact of tariffs on the town's capital budget in 2025, council direct that the provisions of the procurement bylaw regarding requests for proposals tendering be temporarily waived to permit staff to consider options to purchase a used vehicle for this budget item, provided that the remaining provisions of the bylaw regarding ethical purchasing can be upheld. And further, that council directs staff to re-tender for this project with the additional scope of used vehicles.
Councillor Shank, is that the motion that you wish to make?
I come up with the ideas. It's let the professional, I'll stay in my lane. If that sounds like the gist of what I was trying to say.
Moved by Councillor Shank. Oh, go ahead, Alan.
Sorry, I'd just like to clarify. Jessica, could you please reread the part that you talked about waiving? Waiving what specifically?
Sorry, through your worship, I did leave that a little vague because I'm not sure. I think, are we waiving the requirement to publicly tender based on the value?
So there's nothing in the procurement policy as it stands that that does not allow you to tender for used vehicles. That's just not the direction that we have taken.
Okay.
So I don't think you need to waive anything specifically
Okay.
unless council's was requesting that we waive competitive purchasing and don't go back out to RFP and instead go a used route, and then you're completely bypassing the purchasing policy. I don't think that was the intent of that motion, so I just wanted to make sure that we weren't waiving the procurement process as it stands. We would just be reissuing an RFP to include the possibility of a used vehicle.
Yes, sorry, I will reword this.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Grant. You've
So
got the floor.
through you, Mr. Mayor, and I think I may have muddied the waters a little bit in terms of when we bring back a procurement policy, I was referring and should have stated that that policy could include guidance. There's nothing, as the treasurer has said, that would preclude us from also including used. But as we bring forward a procurement policy, within that policy, we could include guidance in terms of value for dollar, include used and new, that sort of thing. And I would say the last half of that motion, if we were to reiterate that, is that staff be directed to include both used and new in an RFP and to tender it out again to see if we can get value for dollar with the inclusion of used vehicles in that process.
Yes, through your worship, that is my apologies. At one point, we were talking about amending or waiving the bylaw, and at one point, we were talking about directly buying from one specific listing. So that was but yes, I think the motion then for Councillor Shank, if you're good with it, would just be, given the uncertain impacts of tariffs on the town's capital budget in 25, council directs staff to retender for this project with the additional scope of used vehicles.
Councillor Shank, is that the intent of your motion?
That is my motion.
Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Nori. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor?
Through you, your worship.
Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, through you, your worship. So just for my own clarity, this is a competitive process. This is going out through the regular channels. It's not, we're going to call up Joe Schmo and ask him what he's got on the lot. They're tendering for this. And we will have specific parameters, like it can't be more than 1 year old, it can't have more than X, it's got to have so much warranty, et cetera, et cetera. And if it comes already outfitted with a workbench and storage, that's a plus, right? Okay.
So through your worship to Councillor Hicks, No one on staff is allowed to call Mr. Schmo. It would be my expectation that we would follow the procurement policy to go through a competitive bidding process to get best value for dollar based on the specs that were laid out. That would be both agreeable to utilities, that it would be fit for purpose, and agreeable to finance, that we are following the procurement policy.
And if I may add through your worship, just to reiterate some earlier comments made by the treasurer, utility staff would work with the treasurer to come up with scoring so that we're able to compare those vehicles and then bring a recommendation before council and for council's decision.
Just so I've got it straight, are we changing a policy in totality, or are we simply changing a policy with respect to this purchase?
I can answer that through you, Mr. Mayor. So we're not changing a policy. What we're changing is a practice. And how we would be guided in the use of that policy. So within the scope of the policy now, we are able to do this. It has not been common practice for the municipality to go out for used vehicles or to include that in the scope of the RFP. That being said, if it is the will of council that as we go out, we would like to include in this case or in future cases, that while you are going through the procurement process, which is a competitive bid, in the search for value for dollar, we would also like to have new and used vehicles included in that process as a practice. That is something we can certainly do, but it has been traditionally the practice of this municipality, and in fact, most municipalities, to buy new.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions or comments with respect? We do have a motion on the floor. Is there any other conversations? Seeing none, we will call for the vote. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? And we have a 3-3, so I have to vote, correct? I'm going to oppose the motion that's on the floor. Where do we go from here, Madam Clerk? Do we entertain another motion?
Through your worship, given that there is still no direction with respect to this tender, yes, another motion would be appropriate.
Is there anyone that would like to make another motion with respect to this report that we have here this evening? Deputy Mayor Calver.
I'll make a motion. We go with a staff recommendation that council receive for information, growth and infrastructure, replacement of utilities cargo van, vehicle number 14-29 in the report. And further, council authorize the staff to proceed with the purchase of a 2024 Ford Transit Transit 250 from James Braden Ford for the amount of $71,390.50.
We have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Calver. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Martin. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, folks. Good discussion, and I think it's going to open some doors with respect to future discussions and vehicles, property purchases. So thank you. Next up, Fire Department proposed amendment to the fees and charges bylaw number 2023-0027. Who on staff is going to speak to this one? I see the chief coming forward. Chief, whenever you get settled in, the floor will be yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're just asking for tonight a amendment to the fees and charges bylaw. We'd like to share the FireFit training tower with our mutual aid partners in advance of an upcoming FireFit event that's happening in the township of Stone Mills. This would equate to a fee being paid and the appropriate insurance documentation to be in place for the agencies to come and practice at our tower so they can prepare for the event that's upcoming in August. We're recommending that to make it amenable or to all concerned, that we charge the day rate for the season so that they can come and use the tower and be able to practice as long as the appropriate insurance documentation is in place.
Thanks, Chief. Is there any questions or comments with respect to Chief Armstrong's? Go ahead, Councilor Nari.
Chief, when you say insurance, you mean they're covered for WSAB under their rates so that we don't get hit in case someone falls down those stairs?
Through your worship, we would have our coverage as a town, but also we'd ask the other towns, mutual aid partners in the fire services to put us as an additional insured for their own personal liability. And that would, that's different than what has been happening in the past. When last year we were experiencing that people were just showing up, signing a sheet and using the tower, and we really had no idea on what was happening there. So we made this change to be a good community agency partner with our other fire services as they are with us, and also to understand that this regional event will be a large influx of people from all over Canada, and oftentimes that brings in needed tourism.
Great, thanks, Chief. Is there any other questions or comments from anyone? Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Shank.
This is an annual for the whole year. You get to use the facilities for $408. Yeah. So you know what? You're being more than fair, considering what the costs are there, and you're covering the liability. So great job, Chief. And you know, this is another way we can help the community and help our neighbors. So great job.
Thanks, Councilor Shank. Councilor Purnell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Chief, does training apparatus not fall under the mutual aid where if somebody has a piece of equipment, you loan it out, and if another municipality has something else, then you just help out with that?
Through your worship, there are a list of items that a mutual aid partner can share with each other. And it's generally speaking, mutual aid is on a reciprocity agreement where if we had a pumper truck and the neighboring mutual aid partner had a pumper truck, we would agree to share that with each other during an emergency. Same with water shuttle is the most popular one, where there's a tanker that has water, carrying water, that we would request those tankers oftentimes with staffing to come and help us at a fire. Generally speaking, the training aspect is not always listed in mutual aid, and oftentimes cities like Kingston and other townships have a fee for the use of their training facilities because there's costs related to that, your worship, and that's what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Purnell. Is there any other questions or comments with respect to the Chief's presentation or his report? Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
What they do in Kingston, because I'm well aware of the tax bill that I get received in Kingston, that there is that fire little surplus that's added in that for that, which we encompass solely here. So still.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mike. Is there anything else? We do have a recommendation that council receive for information the fire department proposed amendment to the fees and charges bylaw 2023-0027, and further that council adds an annual fee of $408 to the current fee schedule for the use of the training tower scaffolding by the fire service mutual aid partners in support of the firefighter fitness and training, and further that council directs staff to incorporate the change into the fees and charges bylaws subject to the public notice provisions. Moved by Councilor Hicks, seconded by Councilor Shank. If there's no further comments, questions, concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed, motion is carried. I think at this point, folks, I missed my hour-and-a-half break time, so we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll see you back about 9 o'clock. Thanks, folks, and welcome back to our regular session of council. Next up, Executive Services Joint Emergency Management Full-Scale Exercise with the Salvation Army. And I think, Aaron, you're going to speak to this.
Good evening, through your worship to members of council. Just a quick summary of the report. We were approached following the CIMIC exercise that the CAO mentioned earlier by the Ontario Division of Emergency Disaster Services through the Salvation Army. They brought forward a proposal to do a collaborative full-scale exercise. This is a great opportunity for the municipality. Really looking forward to it. Some of the key things that will come out of it. So Salvation Army themselves are looking to test their team's ability to support a municipal reception center for displaced residents and operate an emergency food services response to assist those affected by a disaster scenario. In addition to this, the municipality benefits because not only are we able to meet our annual compliance requirements, we're able to test systems that we don't typically get to test. So in prior exercises in the past, we, in most cases, focus on things that occur at the EOC level. So your members of senior leadership, your subject matter experts, we go through tabletop scenarios. The aim of this would be to actually have the practical application of executing a emergency reception center. So definitely huge benefits to the municipality and staff because not only are we collaborating with those NGOs that we would bring in the event, but also getting those, excuse me, those practical abilities practiced with our staff so that when something occurs, it's not chaos and turmoil. It's we've practiced this, we know what we're supposed to do, and here are the steps that we take to do so. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Aaron. Is there any question or comments for Aaron with respect to her report or the presentation that's before us this evening? Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excellent report. And as I mentioned to Aaron earlier, I had spoken to Abby Mills and they've got the new van. It was shipped down and she was really excited and I'm thrilled that this is happening. I'm just going to add one thing. I'm just going to say two words and Councillor Pinnell and I were talking about it earlier. Chaos and turmoil being two of the things you want to avoid in the event of a disaster. I read an interesting article about the benefits of having a civil defense, which I know is well beyond the scope of a municipal council, but I think this exercise is a great beginning. And I think the more often we can do this locally, the better. So thank you, Aaron, for all the work that you've put into this, and I'm totally 100% behind it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything else? Councillor Shank.
No, Aaron, this pre-planning and everything else, I think that's, well, I know what you've done before, but I think it's excellent with the chief and everything else that you're going to be doing here because we have a railway that goes through here. We have 401, we have 41 going up. So there's a lot of chances of happening. You know, in Quebec, they never thought that there was going to be a major oil, main when that would let go. So very things could happen anytime you have a railway going through your area. So kudos to you and with fire services and everything else and what you're doing now to pre-plan and do all this. So I totally concur what they're doing.
Yep. Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Shank. Is there anything else? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation that council receive for information Executive Services Joint Emergency Management Full-Scale Exercise with the Salvation Army Report and further that council support the proposed collaboration. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next matter, Parks, Recs, and Culture Corporate Events Policy. Mr. Brown is coming to the front, and I think Mr. Grant would like to start off, and then we'll turn the floor over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Your Worship. So there's a suite of policies, two policies that you're going to see this evening. The volunteer policy also contributes to this. I just wanted to give council a bit of background as to why I asked the team to put these things together. In my short time here at the town of Greater Napanee, it was apparent to me that there was a lack of clarity between what was corporate policies, what were community initiatives, what was staff permitted to do and not do in terms of making available town amenities and the like. And so these particular policies, I think, would not only provide guidance to staff, but they would provide certainty to people that are running events similar to those that we heard this evening that were looking for town support. They would prevent any unintended consequences, such as staff exceeding their authority in the provision of municipal resources to events or other things of the like. With that, I will turn things over to Mr. Brown, who's done the lion's share of the work.
Great, thanks, Mr. Grant. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the first report in front of you is the corporate events policy. So the purpose of this policy is to set a consistent and predictable procedure to manage current and future high quality events that are owned and run by the town. So the events that we are doing on behalf of the municipality. This policy will provide a framework for making decisions regarding current and new town events, how we add events, how we subtract events, and how we discuss those events and make those changes. So this policy applies to all town staff involved in corporate events. This policy also, will guide how the town of Greater Napanee staff will interact with businesses, organizations, and individuals that contribute via sponsorship to corporate events. I'll speak about the sponsorship opportunities and that plan that we've put together a little bit later. So just looking into the financial implications, the policy will be presented and reviewed annually during budget deliberations. I recall this year when we were talking budget, there was a few questions around the events budget and what we're doing. Are we doing the same? And that's where I'd like to really improve, have a fulsome discussion on all the events that we are planning for the year, what budget dollars are going to be set aside for these events, talk about resources that are needed, and discuss any changes that council may wish to make. So I just put in there the $2025 figures beside each corporate event that we run, just to give you a sense of where we're at right now. In terms of operational implications, it is the responsibility of the community events administrator to plan, prepare, and implement all corporate events, including additional staff requests and recruitment of volunteers. This of course, involves a lot of different departments for certain events, but the coordination is happening at that staff position, and obviously a lot of departmental support as well in terms of logistics. Just moving down, I thought into the policy, I would just like to speak a little bit about responsibilities and what we have in the policy. So responsibility and authority is delegated to council for the approval of the policy and any amendments thereto, approval of any sponsorship agreements valued at $10,000 or greater, approve the addition or removal of corporate events. And so that will be your privilege, and corporate events won't be, changed, taken away, added without your approval. And the approval of the sponsorship package and the opportunities within. For me personally, the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture, I have a responsibility to review and recommend updates to the policy, approval of any sponsorship agreements valued at $10,000 or lower, approve any changes made to minor events. So if there is a small change to a minor event, we're not going to come to council. We can move forward without that. So that brings me into the classifications of events. And so when we look at the events that we have, we've classified them as minor or major. There's some factors that go into how we classified that. That is the budget dollars that are spent on the event, the resources that it requires, how many staff, volunteers, et cetera. But also how many people does it bring in for the community? How large is the event? So we've classified the Parade of Lights, Light Up the Park, Movie in the Park, because there are 3 of them each summer, as well as Canada Day as major events, minor events, Earth Day, seedling giveaway, the Trunk or Treat, and the indoor market. So lastly, I'd just like to touch on the sponsorship opportunities that we've put together. We've done it in a tiered system, and we've also put some guidelines around how we're going to recognize those sponsors, whether that be businesses or individuals, and their contributions to our corporate events. So we have gold sponsor, $1,000 or more, silver sponsor, bronze sponsor, donor sponsor, and the list goes on. And also included are how we would recognize those sponsors. We felt like doing it this way would give the opportunity for multiple sponsors per event, as opposed to historically, we've got a sponsor for this event, a sponsor for that event. And the number in terms of money kind of changed, right? Year to year, event to event. So we just thought we'd put a little bit of a guide here when someone does approach us that has an inquiry about sponsoring an event. We can provide them with the list of events that we have and a summary of how they can contribute to the event as well. So I hope I didn't forget anything on the corporate events policy. I'm sure there's some questions. And again, the corporate events policy is really focused on the events that we run year to year. And we'll be coming to council at budget time to discuss all of those events as a whole and the budget dollars that are associated with those. And that would be the appropriate discussion to have about new ideas and new events that we'd like to see come. And that's how we would make those changes moving forward. So happy to take questions on this policy.
Yep, great. Thanks, Chris. Is there any questions, comments, or concerns with respect to Chris's presentation or the report that's before us this evening? Councillor Hicks.
Thank you through you, your worship. Chris, and maybe Mr. Graham as well. So the sponsorship opportunities, this is going to be put on our web so that people can locate it. I'm just curious as to how we're going to get the word out. I assume we're not cold calling people or doing door knocking and deliveries, so.
Yeah, through your worship, exactly right. We're going to have a section on our website related to events. It'll also it will provide information on corporate events, sponsorships, and how to do that, but it'll also provide more information about how the community can get involved with running events. And we're going to talk about that in the next report. Things like the event planning guide to, get people thinking about what they need to discuss or think about as they're planning their events, but also how to apply to, host a community event. So we'll have a dedicated page on our website for all these.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Thanks, Mr. Brown. Is there anything further? We do have a recommendation that the council receive for information the Parks, Recreation and Culture Corporate Events Policy Report, and further that council approve the corporate events policy as presented. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Parks and Rec Culture Community Events Policy. Mr. Brown, are you going to start off with that? Or did Mr. Grant want to say a few words? Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this one is directly related to this, but very, very different. So staff have identified a lack of clarity in the community about the type and scope of support that the town is able to offer local event planners and user groups. Staff are seeking to gain clarity for the town, council, and community members through the introduction and update of a number of policies, including the corporate events policy, which is events will be run by the town, community events policy, which is this one. What are the requirements for third-party events on town property, and how will the town support those events? The volunteer policy, how does the town engage with volunteers and support those events? Community grants policy, how do local groups access financial support from the town for their event? So the policy recognizes that community events can enhance tourism, civic pride, culture, and education, generate positive economic impact, promote community involvement through volunteerism, and contribute to the quality of life in Greater Napanee. The purpose of the event, community event policy is to set a consistent procedure for predictability, managing requests for the use of town facilities, town equipment, and related support for community events, and facilitating support and approvals through cross-departmental communication and collaboration. So just looking, I'm just going to skip down in the report to the financial implications. So in the proposed policy that has been presented here, all rental fees for the use of town parks and facilities will be charged to the event organizer in accordance with the fees and charges bylaw. So essentially what that means is if there is a fee already in our existing bylaw for the use of a space, like the banquet hall at the arena or the pavilion at Conservation Park, we would want to be able to charge the event organizer that rental fee. Council has already subsidized a lot of these fees for, we've made the determination if it's a nonprofit, you pay a little less. If it's a profit event, you pay a little more. We also have subsidized fees for things like, is it on a weekend? Is it a weekday? Youth versus adult. Like we have a lot of subsidized rates already. So staff recommendation would be if the community organizer needs a facility that we already have a fee for in our bylaw, then we would charge that appropriate rate. All requests for financial support, including for funding to support the event, that will follow the process established already in the community grants policy. And I know that I won't get into the whole new policy, but the process that's already established in that is where we would send people that are looking for support for their event. So some of the services that have been requested by event organizers in the past are listed here. There's also a cost recovery rate beside them. So I'll just kind of run through some of the ones, and really perfect timing tonight with the delegations, to amazing community events that we could potentially be having very soon. You heard some of the requests coming, and these will sound familiar. So providing additional garbage cans at the event site, that's a very common one. And then, if we're looking at a cost recovery, we're typically doing a garbage run every morning anyways. So looking at doing an additional waste collection outside of the normal operations, we're looking at, with staff time, vehicle, fuel, you're looking at about $90 because it would be like a minimum 3-hour call-in. Delivery and pickup of the event trailer. So we already have a fee for the event trailer. People can book that and use that. We would bring it to your event location. We would pick it up the following day. There's already a fee in there for $100 or $150. So that one already exists. Relocating of parks picnic tables is a common one. There wouldn't be any additional fee for this service, but I would just caution the cost to the municipality is that we only have so many picnic tables. And so we put a maximum of 10 in there at the event site because we're pulling those picnic tables out of parks. So they're being displaced from somewhere to go to the event site. So we just want to be careful with that one because we don't want to have, 20 picnic tables at Springside Park and then all of a sudden there's none at Conservation Park, for example. Coordinating the addition of some portable washrooms and hand washing stations is common. This would come at the additional cost of the event organizer, unless council felt different. So we have a lot of portable washrooms throughout our parks and our facilities that we have out seasonally, all season long. If the event organizer wanted additional portable washrooms or hand washing stations at their site, then we can help coordinate that. We can reach out to the service contracts that we have and make sure that that all happens. But it would be council's decision as to would the town pay for that for a weekend or would the event organizer pay for that. We pay a monthly rate because they're out there seasonally. I know it's a little bit more for like a weekend rate, say. So you save a little bit of money the longer you have it out there. So the fees do fluctuate a little bit. Right now we're paying about $185 a month for a fully accessible unit. The next one I'll speak to is the road closure. So this would be setup only. 2 staff, barricades and signage. Staff would not be on site once the location is close to traffic and not monitored by staff during the event. Cost recovery for this is about $560. Street or parking lot sweeping. If it's a special request outside of normal operations, based on the rates, 1 staff, the sweeper, a 3-hour minimum call-in, the cost recovery for that is $915. I will say, like Donald had spoke about earlier, that we do try to line these up with normal operations. So if we know there's a motorcycle driver training happening in a parking lot, we can wait until a little closer to the event so that we can sweep that ahead of time. And because we were going to do it anyway, we just changed when. The presence of a fire truck, 2-hour maximum, $200 per hour. A visit from Sparky, 2-hour maximum, $50 per hour. Those are just some of the things that we've been asked to do in the past. And so obviously council would have some options here to consider. We can apply these fees for these additional services at cost recovery. We could not offer municipal resources to support these community events at all. We could waive some or all of these additional services for nonprofit charitable events or events that meet, a specific criteria. Discount some or all fees for additional service for nonprofit charitable events. So we have some options to discuss, and I would appreciate some direction on how council feels about this. So the community events are obviously bringing a lot of good to the town. And so council's discussion will be about, do we want to, provide these additional services to support these events or not? And then if we do want to provide them, are we going to charge anything for them? So operationally, it is the sole responsibility for these community events of the organizers to run and staff their events, and organizers are responsible for all the preparation, takedown outside of areas that are the sole responsibility of the municipality. So for example, like the road closures the municipality would do. But in terms of staffing and running the event, it is on the community organizer. I spoke a little bit before about the event planning guide. So that's designed to assist with the event planning process. It lays out a number of different things to consider and think about as you're starting to plan your event. And it just provides staff with as much information about the event as possible so that when we're looking at their application for their event, we have all the necessary information. There was one more thing. Yes. So just the classification of events. There's going to be facility booking events that, it's a reservation of a municipal facility or sports field or, event practice or a tournament, say. That's categorized as like a facility booking. So that's pretty basic. The approval process is a confirmed booking. Same thing with a park booking for a small scale event. We confirm that booking. If there's a procession, walking, running, cycling, motorized vehicle procession through the municipality, a resolution of council, if a road closure is needed, request to use town equipment, we would want a resolution of town council for the first event. So we're going to be coming to town council to approve first events, especially if it's major, and then coming back to you with any changes to those events if they are annual. And then a special event, large scale event, obviously a resolution of council for the first event, a community event administrator for subsequent uses if the use is reoccurring and the nature of the use remains substantially the same. So similar to the last one. I think that's about it for this one. Happy to take questions, and I appreciate you listening to my long-winded spiel.
Thanks, Chris. Who wants to start? Do we have any questions, comments, concerns? Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Of course I do. So I'll be brief. Can I ask the community events, the events administrator, so Bethany's role, Bethany's name is on the document, so I'm going to call her by name, okay? So if Donald Stokes reaches out to Bethany with some questions about bathrooms, and a month later on the calendar, Tiffany's having an event, Cars and Guitars, and I'm looking, these are 4 weeks apart. They both need to have porta potties. So if the town gets a rate, and I'm proposing a scenario, because this is the sort of thing that's going to come up, right? Will Bethany tell those two people to talk together and say, you know what, the town gets a rate of $185 for fully accessible. I'll pay for one, you pay for one. We'll keep it there for a month. So it'll be dropped off on the Friday before the barbecue and picked up the Sunday after cars and guitars. Is that something, and I may be outside and I can see Mr. Grant wiggling his eyebrows over there, but is that something that's going to take place? Like, is this, because I think the town needs to be steering these people so they connect together and make the most of what limited resources they have as community groups and volunteers. That's the way my mind thinks. So that's my question. And is that possible? Could the town potentially cover the cost of the bathrooms for 1 month if we get a good rate?
Mr. Grant.
So through your worship, I would say on a relationship basis, there's nothing preventing the community events administrator from mentioning other events that have already been publicized without necessarily giving information about things that have not yet been made public and had been submitted. Would the town offer to pay for bathrooms? I would say the intent of this policy is not to provide staff that discretion. It's to be able to create certainty around how things are going to work, who's responsible for what, and if there is a desire for council to cover the costs of anything on an ongoing basis, our recommendation and my sincere advice is that we put it in writing.
And just,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Chris.
sorry, Your Worship. So just to touch on that as well. So the community event administrator is going to be the staff person receiving the applications. In that case, there would be two separate, and if they both needed washrooms, and it was council's wishes for the town to pay for those washrooms, I would suggest at least putting a maximum on the number. But then if there is opportunity for savings or mixing a couple events that have both submitted applications, it'll also be the role of the community events administrator to go to each department about the needs. So when the person applies for their community event, we of course have to approve that. And part of the process will be checking off the resources that they would like assistance from the town. So there'll be like a list, a checklist that they can say, yes, I would like this. Yes, I would like that. No, I don't need that. So these are kind of all the things that come up over the course of a year, but they might not need any of the town resources, but they will have the opportunity to let us know what they do need and require. So it's more about, does council feel like we should be charging for some of these additional resources, or should we be ready and willing to help in those ways to support the community events, I guess is how I would best word it.
Thanks, Chris. Go ahead, Mike.
So the question you have to ask yourself is that we had one of the delegations tonight was the Great Bay of Quinte barbecue competition. And he had a list of, I think, 7 items, if I believe. All right. And when you go down this list, you have street and parking lots, $915. So are you going to charge them for $915? It's 100% volunteer, and they're putting all the money back into the municipality at the discretion of, what you need or what you don't need. So you're going to charge volunteers to hold a community event. I'm not going to. I'm voting to, you know what I mean? Like, they're donating their time, and you're going to charge them for sweeping, and then you go ahead, and if you look down through here also, he asked for 6 garbage containers, and there's $90 per, so there's another $540. All right. And when you go down through here, when you add it all up, and road closures, $562.73. So you're talking $3,000. And I'm not going to tell a volunteer that's donating his time, that's running a community event, and any of the proceeds from that or any positives is going to go back into the community, but I'm going to hit you with a $3,000 bill right off the hop. So the point is what can we set as rules of how many, not that it's just carte blanche with every event that's going to happen. That, you know what I mean? Because what you do for one, everybody else is going to want. So at the discretion of council, You know what I mean? What is a true volunteer? Because there's going to be, what you set is going to be a policy here. So you can't, what you give to one here, you know, you're going to have, Tiffany was here also saying about, what about, you know, so where does it stop and where does it, you know what I mean? So I would like to have some guidance back from staff saying, you know what, my point, I can't, I want to promote the community. And it's, you have LNA already involved as a county that they're sponsoring it. But we as a municipality, I think we should back it also. You know, Newburgh has the Canal Bash. They have other things that they promote. So we should do the same thing here. One thing I do caution, because I live so close in proximity to Prince Edward County, does this, the presence of a fire truck, 2-hour maximum of $200, does that, and also for Sparky, does that include also that you're going to be charging the fare to putting out during the demolition derby? Because Picton tried that, the chief tried that there, and the backlash was quite oppressive. And I like Sean, I don't want that happen to my fire chief. So all I'm saying, there's got to be certain discretion, what you can charge for, what you can't. If I'm having a private event and I want to have a fire truck there, okay, fine. You know what I mean? But if it's a Napanee fair, that it's a community fair, you know what I mean? And the boys want to put out the water and, you know, have, you know, be there for safety things, that's the chief, but I wouldn't charge for that. That's my discussion on this, and I'd like to hear what your input is.
Thanks, Mike. Did you want to weigh in, Mr. Grant?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to Councillor Shank and members of council. So we would only charge all of those fees if council told us to charge all of those fees. If it is the will of council to say, we would like to see some options as to how can we financially support, and I mean through in-kind support, which has a financial element to the town. If you wanted us to come back with some options about how could we provide some relief from some of those costs, we could certainly come back. We could have a criteria rating that if it's volunteer run, if it's a charitable thing, we could give you some options if you were looking not to get full cost recovery. My request of Mr. Brown was to bring forward a policy with this is what it costs to provide these levels of service. My humble request to council would be is that we don't leave things necessarily up to discretion, that we provide clear guidance and policy so everybody knows what to expect and that we can treat everybody equally. What fair looks like is candidly a political decision. Would be what level of support do you want to provide to that? What do you believe is fair? And my expectation of staff is once we know what the will of council is on what is determined fair, that we carry that out. And if it is not council's will to say like we don't want full cost recovery, we would like to cushion the blow a little bit or a lot. We can give you like a small, medium, and large kind of options in terms of here are what we think your options are that we believe that we could carry out. We would identify any cost implications in a budget in terms of our annual requirement to provide council with the level of in-kind support. Candidly, it was our expectation that we would probably have to go back and give you some options, and that's fair. But our sincere interest is to understand when people come forward with a community event, that we can be predictable, provide the similar process to on every time, and that if people are asking for something, they know specifically what we're able to give, and staff is aware that that is our limit. And that we do not have discretion in dispensing municipal resources for any purpose not outlined in this policy. And candidly, that's part of the problem we're trying to solve.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver.
Thank you, through your worship. So if I'm understanding this, Chris, and just please correct me, providing additional garbage cans at the event site and arrange for one additional waste collection is $90. So is that $90 per can or $90 for 6 or 10 cans?
So the intention of that was, yeah, per as many cans as they needed. So if someone wants 6, right, we're going to that spot to empty those cans out. So it's based on staff fuel and the truck charge. So yeah, that's for whether it was 4 cans, 6 cans, 10 cans, it'd be $90. So what I also heard here tonight is we do need to work on this a little bit and set some parameters around, because if someone were to say, well, I need 20 garbage cans, well, we don't even have 20 garbage cans. So we definitely need to set some parameters around that. And we will and come back.
Okay, and just another follow-up. So, but that would be $90 additional if there was another collection. So right now, we're currently collecting garbage every day. So if somebody needed it collected midday or whatever, that would be the $90 for, if you had 5 cans or 10 cans, it would only be $90. That's question number 1.
Yeah, through your worship, that's correct. So we would have the garbage cans empty and ready to go in the morning anyways. So if they wanted us to come back mid-event to do an additional waste collection, that would be outside of what we would normally do. So that's where, if there was a fee to be applied, that's where it would be applied.
Excellent. And the next one, of course, is the street sweeping. The street sweeper's out every day. If you had something booked for Saturday, they'd probably do the street sweep here on the Friday, but that wouldn't be an additional, because maybe it should have been swept Wednesday, but you'd put it off to do it on the Friday, so it's done. So that wouldn't be an additional charge either. Is that correct?
That is correct. So we would try our best to align the street sweeping requests with the event dates and try to manage that. So it's not, so it falls under normal operations, and it's not but we did want to put in there that, a special request, like if we're doing street sweeping in town here and someone requests us to go sweep the South Fred Hall parking lot on a very specific date, that might not be normal operations. So that might be outside of normal operations. So we wanted to give a fee just so council understands and the community understands that there is a cost to do these things.
No, excellent. The only issue that I have with this whole report, which is absolutely phenomenal, it puts everything in perspective. I don't agree with the charge for the road closure, but that's just my own opinion. Everything else is self-explanatory and really good and decent. The road closure, I mean, $562 for 2 staff to come and set up barricades and signage. I understand staff isn't cheap and it's not, but I mean, we also don't want to try to run people away either.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Calvert. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know that for County Road 2 and County Road Center Street, County Road 41, the request for a road closure has to go to the county. The town has absolutely zero say in that. If you're doing a road closure on John Street at at Dundas Street, but leaving Dundas Street open, that doesn't have to go to the county, right? Because you're still allowing traffic through that thoroughfare. The only reason I'm asking is Market Square, to close off the north and south sides of Market Square. I moved the barricades at the downtown shopping party. So where is the line for the county? Is it just if you're closing it off east to west and north to south on those 2 arteries, or is it if you're closing off side streets as well? Because Market Square doesn't impact either one.
Go ahead, Ms. Grant.
Through your worship, my understanding is if we're not closing off the artery for which the county is responsible for. So if we're closing off roads that we are responsible for, we have the ability to do that. And if there's a specific line between, say, Center Street and part of Market Square, we'll put it just on the other side of that line where we're allowed to.
And there's no fee for the road closure with the town. It's just the request.
That's I think we're going to sort that out here shortly, Anne. Or at least I'm going to make a suggestion. We'll sort that out shortly. So
Thank you. You're probably going the same way I am.
yeah, go ahead. Jess.
Sorry, through your worship, and this is not mentioned in the report at all, but staff have also flagged that our temporary road closure policy does need to be updated to align with whatever direction council gives here. Currently, right now, the policy says we pass a bylaw every time we close a road temporarily, even if it's just for our Remembrance Day parade and Parade of Lights, and obviously that's not what we're doing, nor is that standard practice. It has been a resolution of council, but we'd like to clean that up. And also if there's any additional direction around, for example, that it is free for community nonprofit events, that would be the time to do that cleanup. And it is very clear as well that we have authority over town roads and county has authority over county roads.
Go ahead, Mr. Grant.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. And so the fee that's listed in there is actually for our road closures. And so one of the purposes of this discussion was to give you, because we asked staff if it's in the fees and charges bylaw, it's clear. If not, we asked for a cost estimate. And whether we charge $500, $200, $1, if the will of council votes in a certain direction, that is the right answer for us. But right now, the cost that we estimate with minimum call out fees and vehicles and everything else is about $500. If council does not wish to charge that amount of money, that's well within your rights. We would just respectfully seek some guidance on what, if anything, we would charge.
Yep, go ahead, Ange.
So, thank you, Your Worship. So when I'm reading that, $562.73, it's a pretty specific number. Is that, I want one end of Mill Street closed? Or I want Mill Street closed between I want John Street closed between Mill and Dundas, and that's $562. Oh, and by the way, I also need Market Square closed off. So is that another $562? Like every time there's a barricade, because these are questions that are going to be asked. So I'm just thinking for Tiffany, what her request was tonight. She gave specific streets.
Yeah, through your worship. So I believe this is more based on getting the staff there to do it, the equipment that's involved with it. I don't think it's specific to like, say, the length of the street and how many intersections it might cross. Yeah. But I did get some of this information from the Public Works manager, so I can follow up with him just to clarify on those rates. But that I'm not 100% sure on.
Okay, because that's what I was asking was if you're closing off John Street at those two, that's $562, but then they got to drive the truck over to Market Square and they've got 4. Is that another 500, or is it per event with a limit of 10 barricades or?
I would suggest it's probably per event, but go ahead, Councilor Norrie, then I'll go to Mr. Grant.
I appreciate the cost recovery, but I don't want to lose the will and thank you. I just look at the contract for our market. We don't do any cost recovery for garbage in that. Now we're going to not charge them, but charge someone else. I mean, we have to be very careful how we do this policy, but we got to think of that. And we don't want to scare away, because I remember I did the 2019 Guitars and Cars and very successful and a lot of money in town. So we have to be very careful. And we want Donald's thing to expand, so we can't nickel and dime. I know it costs, but again, we haven't done it for out here. So we have to be very careful and really think this through and be fair to everybody.
Thanks, Councilor Norrie. Councilor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. And I believe that we just went through negotiations with the chamber for the market to be able to provide washrooms, road closures, garbage pickup, and it's all basically was for free. And I'm really not quite sure that the chamber is not for profit, because they want to make a profit off of that. So if we're doing it for them, how can we turn around and do it for others? And I've been struggling with how to bring this out all night, because I know that people, I have different thoughts on all of this, but I'm just wondering how to say it. So I just said it now, and we'll see what the discussion is, but can't do it for one and not the other.
Mr. Grant.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I would say the difference between the chamber and events that are singular in nature is that is an ongoing relationship with the expectation that the market would continue in perpetuity. And that would, for those sorts of things, we would expect that the appropriate vehicle for that would be an agreement. It wouldn't necessarily lend itself to an event request because it's more of, I would say, ongoing operations. With respect to any of the fees that would be charged, it would not be the intent of this bylaw, should we do cost recovery, and I'm suspecting that's not where we're going, but that we would make money on it. We would just seek that so if there's more than one road that would be closed off, we wouldn't say, well, that's $5 and that's 10. It'd be like, what does it cost to get people out there and do the thing? And then leave and then come back and pick the things up. So if it was more than one road, my expectation is it wouldn't cost really any more because you're getting the vehicle from the yard to the place, setting up the barricades in wherever location you're going to do it, then collecting them and bringing them back. If there was the desire to move away from cost recovery and have ongoing support to individual events, my expectation would be that would be a council decision, that, this is what we consider community good. This is the level of investment that we would like to make on an ongoing basis with respect to the various services that were offered. And we're happy to carry that out. I would just like to make sure that whatever that is, whether it be nothing, whether it be full cost recovery or somewhere in between, we land in a place that that council is comfortable with, and then we will carry that out. And I would suggest, probably in the interest of time, if there is a resolution from council that we come back and say, we'd like to have some options of what it could look like if we were to provide some level of investment in community events, because we are looking to encourage and not have people, I think what I heard earlier was run away, then we can certainly do that. I asked Mr. Brown to present full cost recovery, just so everyone has an idea of what that is. But whatever council decides is the level of investment is the right answer for us. We would just like to figure out what that is, so when we carry it out in terms of policy operations, we know that we're doing that. So I would suggest that if there's a desire to see some level of investment in the services that we provide, we can certainly come back and give you some options, like option A, option B, option C, to aid with that discussion. Because, having not seen a vote, what I'm seeing in the room is, cost recovery is not something we're really looking to do if we want to encourage events. We can give you some options to aid in that decision-making if that's the will of council.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. I think I'm going to weigh in here. Obviously, full cost recovery isn't palatable. I don't think that's even to suggest that isn't palatable. I think we have to distinguish who's asking for it. Is it a nonprofit organization or is it a for-profit organization? Obviously, we're going to treat nonprofit organizations that aren't in this business to make money differently than the ones that are using our infrastructure to make money. So I would suggest that for nonprofit organizations, such as maybe a couple of them that we heard this morning or this afternoon, sorry, road closures for nonprofit organizations is a non-entity. Close the roads down. We're going to do that anyway. That's not a big deal. Garbage cans, if they need a few extra garbage cans, sure. I like what Mr. Brown has said earlier, that over the course of regular business, a lot of these things are going to get done anyway. So just to use street sweeping as an example, the streets are probably going to get swept Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I'm just making this up. I don't know what your schedule is. If somebody comes in and says, listen, I got an event that's on Saturday, I want it swept Saturday morning. Well, guess what? You're probably going to have to pay for that, because if it was swept Friday afternoon, or if it was supposed to be swept on a Wednesday afternoon and then finally swept Friday because we said we're going to get it as close to your event as possible, I think that's fair. But if they said it's not, even though he swept it Friday, we want it done Saturday. well, guess what? You may have to get off your wallet to do that. Some of the other some of the other things, and just to use an example that Mr. Stokes had brought, electrical outlets. Those electrical outlets are on anyway. Anybody in this town, and I've seen it, can pull up to those electrical outlets and plug into them. Are we going to charge somebody for a special event? Probably not, unless of course it's for profit, and then we'd have to rethink that. Fire safety compliance. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but if it boils down to notifying our fire department that there could be a fire down there, then we appreciate that. Not any different than any of us having a bonfire or a burning brush, and we call the fire department and say, listen, we're going to burn some stuff here, just to give you the heads up. So I'm guessing that's what it is, but without Donald being here, I'm not sure. Some of the other things I'm not sure fall within our realms. Post-event review. I'm not sure that's something that we want to get involved in because it's not our event. I guess where I'm going with it is that I think if you bring back a policy that suggests there is a difference between a profit, someone that's making money, and a nonprofit, somebody that's doing something for the good of the community. Obviously there's some leeway, and like I say, as far as the road closures, I mean, I think that's a no-brainer. We, in the regular course of our duties, empty the garbage cans on a daily basis, I would think. So unless an event creates undue hardship and fills the garbage cans up twice a day or 3 times a day, that probably should suffice. But I have confidence in our staff that when they hear of an event, they will do everything in their powers to include it, whatever the ask is, in a regular routine process. And the street sweeping, I think, is a very good example of that. But that would be my humble opinion, is that I think we need to treat the nonprofits differently than the people that are out making money. If you're out to make money on a function downtown, you know, you may have to pay for a few things, but for our nonprofits, I think there is some flexibility there, and I appreciate what Mr. Brown has said. So that's my views. Is there anything else that anybody would like to add? Go ahead, Councillor X.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I agree with what you said. I would like to propose something though, because there is, if nothing else, there is administrative work. So it's the booking of the trailer for the tables and the chairs. It's making sure that the barricades aren't left on a side road that was blocked off for some special work, that they're back in town. So first question, are you using E11 to create work tickets and schedule things so that it's visible to everyone? Is there a calendar? This is a logistics question, but is there a calendar? I know that Bethany would be the one probably doing all of the coordinating with Public Works and with Parks and with Jessica, if there's some sort of special permit needed, if they want to have a beer tent, for example, or a 50-50 draw, those sorts of things. I don't think we would be in the wrong to say, when you come to us and ask us for this, we would like a $200 deposit. Because if, or it's $200, it's a major event, and it just offsets some of the administrative, and it makes sure that the bookings are done and that it's all there and you've got your approval and everything is good. It's just a thought, because sometimes if you put a small dollar figure on something, it keeps everyone accountable. And once the event is over, it could be returned even. But I mean, it's not unheard of to have a deposit fee for, I mean, like, let's keep in mind that this is work. This is additional work for staff. It's outside of regular, like they're doing a garbage pickup on Saturday afternoon when they would normally be home with their families, right? So they're getting paid for it. I don't know. I think perhaps that $100 or $200 fee.
Thanks, Councillor Shank. We'll look for a motion to go past 10 o'clock because I know we are at 9:58. Because if we're not, we're going past 10 o'clock. So moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion on the floor? And I apologize for leaving at the late hour. So all in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Yeah, and it doesn't look like we have one. So, and I apologize, Mike, but we'll get through this here shortly. So, okay, now go ahead.
So just so we don't get in the weeds, all right, all I want to know is I agree with what the mayor said. Bring a policy back, because if I'm Donald Stokes, I want to know by April if it's going to cost me $3,000 or whether I'm in or I'm out. And I've just done all this work. I got jerked around the last time for how many years? Now all of a sudden I'm going ahead, now I'm a go. Now you're going to hit me with $3,000. I tell you to rub salt. So the point is what I want to know is exactly what you said. Come back with a policy of profit, not profit. What are you going to do, what you can do? Because if we don't plant a little bit of seed for the Tiffany Lloyds that want to go ahead and do a crosswalk with Veterans Crosswalk we're putting back in the community, well, then you're going to tell them all rub salt. All right. And I'd be the first one saying, well, guys, you're getting shafted. You know what? Forget it. So all I'm saying is bring back a policy for the next meeting so everybody knows where they stand and we can get on with business. That's all.
Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Shank. And I think we covered a lot of the things that Chris covered. I'm not sure we covered them all, but if we didn't, let us know, Chris. And if there's anything else that you can think of, it's difficult for us because we don't know what the day-to-day operations are, right? So, but when we get these, and actually Don's presentation, he had a bunch of the stuff there. So that's kind of neat. And the fact that he's given us an idea as to what to talk about. But I think it would be beneficial to bring back the type of requests that you would get on a regular basis. And I know it's near impossible because then somebody comes out of the blue and says, I need a helicopter pad or something but if we could narrow down at least the real basic things, which I think we've done mostly, I think it would be helpful. And I think it would be very helpful to distinguish between profit and nonprofit. And maybe there's another avenue out there either, but those are just the two that jump to mind. Go ahead, Mr. Grant.
So if I may, Mr. Mayor, I would recommend that council has a resolution that we come back with a policy that provides costing for-profit events and a series of options for nonprofit events. And so I think what would help the discussion is tier A, tier B, tier C, tier D, and then you would choose where you think you want to go. And it could include a general fee, a rate per service. We'd give you lots of different options to see where you want to land. And then when we land on that, staff is very clear on what council's will is. We're not exercising discretion by giving away resources that haven't been authorized to do so. And that is candidly what I'd like us to end up with. And we can give you a variety of options and you can tell us which one you want, or we want option C with a bit of a variant. And we can do that and we can have that back within the next council meeting.
And that's what I was going to suggest. And I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Madam Clerk, do you have what? If you could just, if you could just give us a read of it and we'll move forward.
So through your worship, motion potentially to be put on the floor would be received for information, the report. Further, council direct staff to bring back a report to the April 8th meeting and amendments to the draft community events policy that includes costing for-profit events and a series of options for in-kind municipal support of nonprofit community events.
And I think that should get us closer to where we want to be, I hope anyway. So do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Shank. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor and any other advice that we want to give staff to head in that we haven't already talked about? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Next matter is Financial and IT Services 2022-2023 Draft Financial Statements Corporation of the Town of Greater Napanee. Ms. Hamill, whenever you're settled in, the floor will be yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. So before you this evening, we have the draft financial statements for the 2022, 2023 fiscal years for the cemetery. These are required to be reported separately from the rest of the town's financial statements. So you have those statements here for you. Just to elaborate briefly on these, so these financials covered the care and maintenance trust fund. So the municipality is quite regulated in what it can and cannot spend these funds on. We are only able to spend the interest that's earned on this fund, not the principal. So you'll see the expenses throughout the statements on that. And we strive to spend what we do collect in interest each year, and you'll see that going forward. Happy to take any questions that council may have on this.
Thanks, Alan. Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
I'll move staff recommendation, but it's smart. You don't, in any smart business, you don't spend your principal, yeah.
Yeah,
I wish everybody did that.
and I think it's dictated by law anyways in that case, so, yeah. Which maybe you're right, maybe we should have more of that, so. Moved by Councillor Shank, staff recommendation. Do we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to Alan's report or presentation? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion that's on the floor. Opposed, motion is carried. Bylaws. We do have a bylaw number 2025-0023, license, regulate, and govern taxi cab owners and drivers in the town of Greater Napanee. Look for a motion to put it on the floor. Moved by Councillor Hicks, second by Councillor Shank. Ready first, second, and finally passed this 25th day of March 2025. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Bylaw number 2025-0024 to amend Schedule B of Bylaw 2024-0064, Parks and Public Spaces Bylaw. Look for a motion to put it on the floor. Moved by Councillor Hicks, second by Councillor Shank. Ready first, second, and finally passed this 25th day of March 2025. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Information reports from members. Are there any information reports that any members would like to share with us? Seeing none, inquiries. Do any members of council have any inquiries they can task staff with respect to anything that's burning inside them? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
So my inquiry is that what stops the municipality from singing "O Canada" before the council meeting? Considering what the way the mood of the nation is, and some of the concerns with the tariff wars and everything else, and how some people might be very much impacted, especially in the auto industry. Part of unity or whatever is singing "O Canada" before a council meeting. Other municipalities have done it. Got an email from a constituent earlier today would made good sense that up in Collingwood that they were doing it. So we used to say the Lord's Prayer and sing "O Canada," but all I'm saying is if you could find out and see what we could do and discuss it amongst council and see whether they would do it or not. But I think at this time of patient, I think we should be proud of the nation we have and we should sing it. So
thanks, Councillor Shank. Madam Clerk.
Through your worship, that is certainly something that would be completely council's discretion to dictate whether we do that or not. Your procedural bylaw states that we have the singing of O Canada at the inaugural meeting of council, but there's nothing saying that we couldn't have it at any other meetings at council's direction. I will say I personally don't sing very nicely, but if you'd like a staff report, put that on the next agenda for consideration. Do that.
Yep, go ahead, Mike.
So I don't want to belabor this at the time it is, but if everybody could get a hold of the mayor this week and tell him yay or nay, and we'll go ahead and we'll find out. I've got one yay here, and if you have enough people that want to do it, then hey, there you go. And I'll be honest with you, I am the worst singer that there has ever been. But if there is a prompt that can go ahead and go with us, that you have some music on the side or whatever, I just think that we should do something that maybe the old timers love to do and I love to do also.
And suspecting that I know the voices around this horseshoe, I'm thinking maybe we should look at the playing of O Canada as opposed to the singing of O Canada. But that would just be my humble opinion. So, Madam Clerk, yeah, can you can bring back a report at the next meeting with respect to the policy or processes, what we need to do this, and then we can we'll look for a motion and call for a vote on it. How's that sound? Thanks, Councillor Shank. Is there anything else? Notices of motions. Does anybody have any notices of motions this evening? Seeing none, new business. Is there any new business that we'd like to entertain this evening? Seeing none, announcements. Does anyone have any announcements for this evening? I'm going to make a real quick one that I'd like to express my thanks to Mayor Hagedorn for entering into a friendly agreement or wager with respect to the Junior C hockey team, the Under 10 Jets and the Napanee Raiders. Both teams played very hard, went to 6 games, and the Napanee Raiders won. As a result of the small wager that we made, Mayor Hagedorn has been so gracious to wear a Napanee Raiders jersey this evening at his council meeting, and I suspect that it probably went over fairly well. And congratulations to Mayor Hagedorn for doing that, to both hockey teams. They had a good season, and the Napanee Raiders are now well into the next series, and we're hoping that they're going to win at least 3 more games to get out of their league. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks for that. So is there anything else? Seeing none, CEO's remarks. Nothing from Mr. Grant. The forward calendar, I know we've all had an opportunity to look at the forward calendar with respect to that and the council resolution tracker. Is there anything in those 2 documents anyone has any questions of? Seeing none, look for a motion to confirm the proceedings of the Town of Greater Napanee Council. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, second by Councillor Martin. Ready first, second, and finally passed this 25th day of March, 2025. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Norrie. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, folks, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.